Queen, me too. Someone's knocking at my door. Church had started. Booyah. Look at us. It's like we know what we're doing. All right. Hello, hello. I bid adieu. It's Wednesday. It's already almost Thanksgiving.
I know. I thought it was
Just think about that for a
tomorrow.
minute.
I thought it was tomorrow.
You thought Thanksgiving was tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy.
I know.
It's the last Thursday of November.
But didn't it used to be the third Thursday of every November? Or did they change it?
Wait, what?
Didn't Thanksgiving fall on the third Thursday of November, not the fourth Thursday of November?
It was just the
Okay.
last Thanksgiving.
I thought it
Or
was.
not the last Thanksgiving. It's the last Thursday. Sorry. My fucking my screen was messing up and wasn't showing there for a minute on my stream. So I was trying to fix that.
I could
But
have
yeah, no,
sworn it was
it's
the
always been
third Thursday.
the third November or third Thursday of November.
Is it the third or the fourth? Because this time it's the fourth. It's not till the 28th. Think of that. 7, 14, 21, 28. That's the fourth
Okay.
Thursday. I think
Okay, hold on.
changed
Maybe
it.
I'm wrong. You know what? Let's look this up really quick because
It feels wrong to have it on the 28th. I feel like that's so late in the month compared to I remember back in the day like it being on the 25th or 26th and thinking that was a later.
Okay, no, you're right. It's on the 4th. It's celebrated on the 4th Thursday, not the 3rd. My bad. So
Okay,
yeah, it's celebrated every 4th.
Did it used to be the 3rd?
No, I think it's always been the 4th.
Okay. I just feel like the 28th is so far away. Like that's so late in the month.
Yeah,
Plus,
commonly celebrated on the 4th Thursday of November. The actual day can vary from November 22nd to the 28th. This is because there are 5 weeks in November, and the day can change based on leap years. For example, in 2024, Thanksgiving will be on Thursday 28th. So yeah, leap year gets taken into account. Which, is something that I probably should have took into mind. But I'm stupid. So
No, not at all. I'm the one that thought it was tomorrow. I'm over here thinking, am I not getting deviled eggs? I haven't heard shit from my family at all. My mom says that her hands are hurt, so she can't cook. So I'm over here it's tomorrow and I have nothing to do. So no, I've got another week. Okay.
Well, you better get some shit together. Better get it together.
I think I'm just gonna do a little one here at the house, just a tiny, tiny little one, and then maybe do a Friendsgiving in the Discord and watch a movie and hang out with people.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. Definitely gonna be having a little din celebration here at the house. Hang out with the kids. And then I might get on, watch some stuff, stream some stuff, do some shit.
Yeah.
I definitely plan on watching Thanksgiving on Hassan's stream because every Thanksgiving his uncle gets on there and they debate each other and it's fucking amazing. It's great.
Okay.
every year it gets more funny. So yeah, I'm looking
I
forward to that. Probably
remember
gonna watch a little bit of that.
I remember that happening. I just didn't know it was like a tradition, like an annual Thanksgiving tradition. That's funny.
Yeah, it's kind of become one thing, and I think, funnily enough, I could be wrong on this, but I think he started doing it the year that I moved down here. So it was like the first Thanksgiving that I had to spend by myself. So I was able to, I was just spent the whole time watching that shit. It was
Aw.
awesome. It reminded me of arguing with some of my uncles on Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's like, dude, I'm sorry you hate poor people, dude, but you're poor too. So think about it for 2 seconds. What you're saying? Like,
Yup.
no, fuck poor people. Punish them. Like,
Yup.
damn, dude. Okay, hey, this is a day we're supposed to be thankful, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Supposed
definitely
to be
don't miss
thankful.
uncles and shit.
No, but you know what? Before we get into today's show, I will just say, like, Thanksgiving. Did you used to like do anything special? Was there, did you guys go in anybody's house, or did people come to your guys' house?
Yeah, the big thing for Thanksgiving growing up was everybody coming together to go to my grandma's house. And my grandma
Okay.
had two different places, one in the Mojave Desert and one up by San Francisco. So either way, we were all the kids were just gonna have a fucking blast. You know, we either go and play out in the desert all day or we go run around the city over by San Francisco. So it was grandma's house. Everybody from all over the state went there on Thanksgiving. You know, we got to stay there for like the weekend or the week, you know, because it's grandma's house. And yeah, but as soon as she passed away, it kind of went
Oops.
over to my mom's house. And now that my sister's kind of taken on the grandma thing because my mom's starting to not care anymore. So it's been my sister's house recently,
Yeah.
which is nice. I don't mind. I let my
No, and
sister take on that role.
sometimes,
I don't want it.
yeah. No, and sometimes traditions kind of have to be passed on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so strange as a kid growing up thinking that this is gonna be forever and realizing that it's not, and then looking back like, "Holy shit, it hasn't been forever," and I've been dealing with it longer without than I did with, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel like it's one of those things. The further you get from having one of those kind of holidays, the more distant the idea becomes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, well, damn, like there's been more years with that, like you just said, it's been more years without them with. So
Right,
at a
right.
certain point, um, but yeah, for me, we used to go to my uncle's house. He lived up in like a somewhat small town up in Wisconsin. He owned a like sporting goods store and shit like that. So basically, what would happen is all the family that was from Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, they would all, meet up there. And after everybody ate and after they played cards and after one of the afternoon football games, we would all get in our cars and go down to my uncle's store. He would open it up and we'd buy stuff, whether it was jerseys, basketballs, athletic stuff, whatever, right? And it was the coolest thing. And I don't know about you, but like as a kid when you're in the car, you always kind of have those landmarks to let you know how close you are to home. Because when you're a kid, you don't
Yeah.
understand miles or any of that shit, right? You're just like, how close are we? How long is it gonna take? And
Yep.
so it was, one of the fun things for me and my brother especially was we'd always hear the Adam Sandler Thanksgiving song on the way up there, and we'd go crazy and like sing that shit loud as hell and probably annoy the fuck out of my parents. Um,
Aw.
and then there was a Hormel factory that was along the highway, and they had a really cool neon site that would sign that would light up and like do all sorts of cool little animations and shit. And it was like that too, since I was a little itty bitty kid, and it was just one of those markers where like on the going to, it's like, okay, we have a couple hours before anything, so take a nap, do whatever, and then on the way back it's like, shit, 20-30 minutes, you're about to be home,
Yes.
you know.
Yep, that was my favorite too. It wasn't as exciting for me because there's a town right before my town, and in between the two towns is just this open desert, and there was it's where like where the town shits, and then like it goes to that area to kind of like I don't know what the fuck it does there, but the shit that the whole town shits out of, it goes to this area. And the
Mm.
freeway's like right by it. So on the way home from grandma's, uh, if I smelt that, I knew I was in that town and the next town was home. Not the best smell in the world, but I knew home was coming.
Yeah. Oh man. That reminds me, I had an aunt who lived in a town that it was a paper mill there. So
Oh,
like that shit was bad. So I totally get like the smells just
ugh,
mm,
God,
mm.
it is horrible.
Yeah, no bueno.
But it's home though.
Um
You're like, home's coming.
yeah, just got to get through the cow and pig shit.
Yeah, that's
Cuz that
all.
was one thing like if I ever went whenever I went north, so like whenever I went to like Wisconsin. Oh shit, yo, Cookies, thank you for the sub. Whenever I used to go to Wisconsin, we'd have to go through the country, and there was a pig farm on one of the roads that I'd always take. So during the summer, it was just brutal driving past that shit because like you get like 5-10 minutes from it, you start smelling the pig shit. Uh,
Oof.
Not a good time.
No,
Not
not at all.
a good time.
No, no, definitely
60
not.
months Cookies.
God damn.
That's a long time, my friend.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the time that you when you hear 60 months, that's like those really annoying parent moms that are like, my baby's 60 months. And I'm like, how fuck old is that? Can you tell me that in years, please?
quick Maz. Oh man.
I'm as loyal as a dog, bro. Aw. You're like a golden retriever, Cookies. It's adorable.
Yeah, that's definitely at least what like 5 years, maybe six, or no, it's just a little over five, right?
Oh,
Because 60,
24,
so
36,
648.
48, 60.
Yeah,
Yeah, 5 months.
5 years.
Oh, or
9 months.
5 years, sorry. Jesus.
That old chestnut. Woof
Five.
woof bark bark.
Yep.
Well, that was a fun little intro. We got to have a fun little personal deep dive there. It was nice going down
Yeah.
memory lane. Today, though, we're going to be talking about the broconomy, muchachos. You understand? Broconomy 101 today, as always, with the homie Jimmy,
That's
the
right.
Jimi Hendrix experience.
What's up? What's up?
um, However, we are going to start off with a couple of videos, but I promise you it is all going to tie in. This video is going to be talking about Trump's picks for his cabinet for the Department of Education, as well as the person who's going to be in charge of. They're basically going to be like the health czar. And he
Okay.
chose, dude, fucking somebody from Turkey, Cookies, dude. Shout out Turkey.
Hey.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org,
Amy
the War and
Goodman
Peace
married me.
Report. We end today's show looking at President-elect Trump's latest nominees. Trump has nominated billionaire Linda McMahon to head the Department of Education, which
She just
Trump
looks
has pledged
evil.
to shut down. McMahon is the former CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment. She headed the Small Business Administration.
Dude, she looks like a fucking Disney villain. You know what I'm saying? The eyes and everything. Plus, she's got like the Hillary Clinton type fucking
Yeah.
dictator woman suit.
Yep,
During
with the
Trump's
hair.
first term. She gave at least
He looks
$50
like a Disney
million
villain.
to
See,
a
Cookie said the
pro-Trump
same
PAC
shit.
For
during
real.
this election. She and her husband, Vince McMahon, were recently sued for failing to stop a WWE ringside announcer from sexually assaulting young boys.
Okay, so that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to show this video, because this is something that needs to get talked about more. Okay?
Yeah.
Because for how long have we been having to hear from all of these fucking literally brain broken conservatives who talk about constantly how it's gay and trans people that are going after children? We have to protect the children. And they use mottos and slogans like save the children, protect the children, because it's something that if somebody tries opposing that, you're like, whoa, dude, that's kind of fucking weird that you're like even trying to bring up anything against that. Like, what, you don't want to save kids? You fucking you P Diddy, bro. And it's like they completely ignore a case like this. And the problem is, this isn't even just like a one-time thing. You have Roy Moore, who Trump tried getting in last time, who literally was banned from the mall in the city he lived in. He was known for going after young kids so bad that they banned him from the fucking mall.
That's disgusting.
Like, at the end of the day, if we're going to, work around these slogans like I was talking about of, protect the kids and save the children and stuff like that, let's actually fucking do it. I would like that. I would like for that slogan to actually mean something instead of be a tool that is constantly said and used as a dog whistle against people who are gay or trans or who people who just dress up in drag. Because contrary to popular belief, not everybody who dresses up in drag is gay, bisexual, or trans. It's kind of crazy, right? But it's just the truth.
Right.
Vince McMahon also has been sued by a former WWE employee who accused him of sexual assault and of trafficking her to other men.
And that's the other side of the WWE stuff. And I know Cookies knows a little bit about this because he's into wrestling. But this guy right here is responsible for one of the biggest hush money scandals when it comes to covering sexual assaults and rapes and trafficking, essentially. Like, he covered that shit up exponentially. And honestly, it's no surprise because when you look at Donald Trump's best friend, Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, it kind of runs in the circle. It's something that isn't new.
Yep.
And what you have to realize is that a lot of the prosecutors that went after people like McMahon and his wife, they're going to have a new attorney general. And guess what Trump's going to do? He's going to send his attorney general after the prosecutors who fucking went after the McMahons. Because ultimately, they had some sway in helping him out getting elected. Because he reached out to them. They did a lot of good promotion for him. Wrestling has always been a big promoter of Donald Trump. They fucking love him.
Yo, Trump and wrestling. We're in idiocracy. Yo! All right.
Just saying.
I'm having my mind blown right now. Sorry, I just realized that the president in Idiocracy was a WrestleMania guy, and Trump is bringing his wrestling friends in here. Whoa. I'm in shock.
It's great, isn't it?
We're joined now by the Assistant Secretary of Education under President George H.W. Bush. Diane Ravitch, thanks so much for joining us. In these few minutes we have with you, talk about this latest nomination by President-elect Trump. Talk about McMahon.
Roxy.
Well, I had to learn about her because she is not someone who's been engaged in the field of education at all. She led the Small Business Administration in the previous Trump term.
Roxy just got
President-elect Trump
with
has
25
a
kills
habit
and a taco
of
drop.
choosing
I'm in
people who
shock
have
right now.
either
What the fuck?
a desire to destroy the department.
You should have done really bad. You don't want to give his statistics.
She falls into the latter category. She does not have any experience in education. Although she spent 1 year on the Connecticut State Board of Education, but otherwise she's a businesswoman. She would have been well qualified to head the Commerce Department, and apparently that's the job she wanted. But her job now, according to Project 2025 and everything that Trump has said, is to eliminate the Department of Education. She is not qualified to run the department because she doesn't know anything about it. And it's hard to say whether or not Congress will go along with the president's desire. He cannot single-handedly abolish the Department of Education. This is something that has to be done, if at all, by Congress.
Well, let me ask you something. She gave more than $7 million to 2 pro-Trump super PACs in 2016. As well, this year gave $10 million to the Make America Great Again PAC. President Trump says we will send education back to the states and Linda will spearhead that effort.
So, right there, they're going to send education back to the states. Why does he want to send it back to the states? Well, there's 2 different things that exist. Ultimately, things that directly impact people, such as education, you have to be very careful because a big component of conservatism, right, is ultimately less federal regulation, less federal intervention, small government, right? That's one of the major key concepts of conservatism.
Right.
So you want to turn the rights over to the states. Why do you want to turn the rights over to the state? Let's say you're in a state like Kentucky, for example. You can then have, I forget, I think it was maybe Oklahoma, where somebody recently bought a bunch of Trump Bibles that were specifically $65 versus the $3 that they normally are. And they want to specifically start bringing Christianity back into public schools. They want to take it back to the states to start bringing it in there to allow for specific religion expression in school, and it only be allowed to be Christianity. That's the move that they're going to, because you need a propaganda machine, and what better propaganda machine than the school system? Because in the conservative mind, the school system is already a propaganda machine, but it's for liberals, right? Like 9 times out of 10, you'll hear people say, yeah, you know, these liberal institutions and blah, 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 blah. But then you end up finding out people like Tucker Carlson. Where did he go to? Yale. Where did J.D. Vance go to? Yale. Where did fucking like 90% of the Fox News hosts go to? Ivy League schools. The same places that they call like liberal hellscapes and brainwashes. So how is it that they were just lucky enough not to get brainwashed, but everybody does? Because ultimately, anybody that does go to college, and luckily I have a brother that went to college, you end up finding out that no, it's not a bunch of liberal heads, it's a bunch of fucking neocons that teach a lot of history and economics classes and political theory and political science classes. They're the ones who dominate it. Maybe if you're lucky, you might get a libertarian professor. Who knows? But that's the most that you'll get. It's very rare unless you go to like maybe Berkeley or like a Columbia or like specific schools that are known to harbor a lot of socialist, like pro-socialist activities and groups. I don't know, Jimmy, if there's anything you wanted to add real quick, because I feel like I've been ranting for like 5 minutes.
No, rant. You're good. Keep going.
But yeah, so really, like you have you have the juice there. You have the argument there to be made ultimately, because like I said, they already feel that the schools are a propaganda machine, so they're going to turn it into that. And that's why he picked McMahon, because she is somebody who will take the initiative. Because let's be honest, right? Like Trump cabinet picks,
right,
a lot of times they don't get approved. Or if they do, it takes like 5 extra weeks because they're unlikable people and he just bends people to submission.
Right.
So even if he doesn't get McMahon specifically, this is a clear indication of what kind of policy he wants. And she is very much one of those, we need to bring prayer back into school, blah, blah, blah. But I kind of wanted to add that caveat and just kind of expose exactly what they're trying to do when they talk about bringing it back to the States. And again, I know I went on a tangent, but I hope I made sense.
What would it mean if the Department of Education were shut down?
Well, what Project 2025 says is that they're going to block grant all the federal funding. What that means is that they will take whatever money is currently going to the states, send it to the states with no strings. So right now, when a state gets money for Title I, it goes to schools that have a lot of poor children. When they get money for children with disabilities, it goes to schools that have children with disabilities. With the block granting, which is what they have in mind, there would be no strings attached. They could divert that money for other purposes. So Project 2025 says that at some point the federal funding would simply stop.
So basically it's going to be legal discrimination.
Yep.
Depending on, if you're poor, if you're disabled. So if you're poor or disabled, you are going to see your child's educational funds slashed.
Yep.
They are going to get punished even more. And I think it's safe to say anybody who has a kid, whether they're in school already or not, we all think about, what our child's education is going to look like. And just the thought of public schools getting even more cuts than what they already have, when we're seeing record numbers of teachers, more than 90% of teachers have to pay for school supplies out of their own pocket when they barely make enough money to survive themselves.
Yep.
I don't know about you, Jimmy, but it kind of seems like the system is failing. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been screaming that for a while now.
Yeah. But my question is to you and anybody who may be listening, is it failing because there was just unforeseen elements, or is it failing by design?
And they're really saying to the states, we're going to take away your federal funding. Here it is, you can have it now, but eventually it will dry up and you'll have to take care of your own federal monies, or not federal monies, make it up from state monies. What that means is basically going back to 1965, where there were vast inequities among the states, which was the reason for passing federal aid to education. It was an equity measure, and that equity measure will be wiped out.
Again, I specifically brought up southern states like Kentucky, or maybe even in Alabama, or the state that I live in, South Carolina. Up until 1965, and then Brown versus Board of Education also was a very huge thing. But up until that point, if you were not rich and you were not white, and you went to school in the Bible Belt, it was tough. You didn't have many textbooks, you didn't have many teachers, didn't have many places to sit, and honestly, schools weren't safe. Right. Numerous schools were attacked. It's not trying to be like so much as an alarmist. I'm just trying to get people to understand that these are literal things that we are going to be expecting to see. I hope that I'm wrong, but just understand that like when things get to that point and people such as myself aren't necessarily freaking out the same way, it's not that we're not upset or anything. It's just we seen this coming. And that was kind of like how I felt in the beginning when Trump had gotten elected, right? Because I remember Jimmy being like, wait, why the fuck is nobody else freaking out? And it was something that kind of made me think, and I was like, okay, maybe, why am I not freaking out? And then it was just like, oh, because like I seen this shit coming. I knew it was gonna happen. I knew Kamala didn't stand a chance. I knew the Democrats were gonna put up like a very shitty fight, and they were gonna just clutch the grasp of victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yep.
And then be like, oh wait, never mind, we don't want that, and then let go. So I think it's more so that, and so like I just want to get that out too, because again, it's not that we're not affected or we don't care. It's just we seen this coming. This is something that we've been trying to ring the alarm bells about. Yeah. But unfortunately, as one of the wise sayings goes, like being a leftist is being right, but just too early.
Too early, yeah.
Yeah. Oh shit.
She doesn't know anything about it. And a Commerce Department, and apparently that's the job she wanted, but her Board of Education experience. Like she falls into the latter category. She does not have any experience in education, although she
no experience in education.
She did State Board of Education, but otherwise she's a businesswoman. She would have been well qualified to head the Commerce Department, and apparently that's the job she wanted. But her job now, according to Project 2025 and everything that Trump has said, is to eliminate the Department of Education. She is not qualified to
like we're past this
block
a little bit,
granting,
yeah.
which is
I think
what
it was
they
at
have
the
in
end of what
point.
she
The
was
federal
saying.
funding would simply stop. And they're really saying to the states, we're going to take away your federal funding. Here it is, you can have it now, but eventually it will dry up and you'll have to take care of your own federal monies, or not federal monies, make it up from state monies. What that means is basically going back to 1965, where there were vast inequities among the states, which was the reason for passing federal aid to education. It was an equity measure, and that equity measure will be wiped out.
A final question. This from the New York Times. She's played an influential role.
Yo, somebody
in
get my girl Amy some water,
Trump
please.
Presidency as the chair of America First Policy Institute, which has set out a more immediate list of changes it says could be achieved
stoner,
changing
always
the department's
like,
priorities.
clearing her throat,
those include stopping schools from promoting inaccurate and unpatriotic concepts, quote unquote, about American history surrounding institutionalized racism and expanding voucher programs. She's always talked about being pro-choice, not in terms of abortion, but in terms of privatizing schools.
That's unfortunately continuing a trend that started long ago under, I guess, Reagan, although Reagan was not able to do anything to make it happen. But choice got embedded into No Child Left Behind with the charter school movement, and then the charter school movement turned into the voucher movement. And
yeah, so the voucher movement is no different than charter schools. I think some places still call them charter schools, but
yeah.
I think legislatively they always try to refer to them as like voucher programs. Why exactly they do that, I couldn't tell you. Besides maybe the fact that like charter schools have gotten such a very bad name associated with them that they just needed to call it something different.
Yep.
Because they are charter schools, they don't have to be based off of like federal curriculum. They can dictate their own. So there's a lot of kids who could graduate from that school and not be equipped to go on to the next level because they're not even caught up with people who are 2 or 3 grades lower than them.
Yeah.
A lot of the charter schools are often based in like faith, so there's like a lot of tax exemption status for the schools themselves, and they can kind of increase the tuition fee. And thirdly, they're not really responsible. So what ended up happening with a lot of schools was they would set up shop, and within the first 6 to 9 months, they wouldn't make enough money, and they would close down shop, and kids would get ready to go to school the next day, and the fucking doors are closed and shut down. And there was a lot of people who were pissed off about it, and the courts ended up intervening, and they were like, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. It was something that, it's a private school.
Yep.
There are now about half of the states, almost all of them red states.
Yo, what's up, California?
Programs, and these voucher programs enroll children who are predominantly well-to-do. They're not helping kids who are poor. Most of the kids who take vouchers never attended a public school. The voucher program is a subsidy for kids who are already in private and religious schools, and it's been a tremendous boon for religious schools. And when you add that to the Supreme Court having lowered the bar for sending public money to religious institutions, we're heading towards a wipeout for the wall of separation between church and state. I think that when
education historian Diane Ravitch, I want to thank you. I want to
damn.
thank you for being
with us.
We're going to have to leave it there. We're going to continue to look at this. Former Assistant Secretary of Education under George H.W. Bush. But we're going to turn right now to President-elect Trump's pick for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, the well-known TV person.
Yo, Dr. Oz. Hey, I just want to point out for a second, Oprah is responsible for giving us 2 of the worst fucking doctors in history, and that is saying something, because there's been a lot of fucking shitty doctors throughout history.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yo.
Fuck, dude, Oprah ruins... Oh, dude, Oprah... I'm going to start a YouTube channel called How Oprah Ruined My Life.
Okay.
So, if anybody's down to mark their confession with me.
Yo.
I read that Comcast is going to spin off MSNBC, so bye-bye. Oh! Dude, if you have an article or a video on that, if you wouldn't mind putting that in chat, and then Jimmy or myself can check it out.
CMS is the agency that oversees health coverage for 150
That's
million
interesting.
people, part of the Department
Well, I know
of Health and
Comcast has been
Services.
cracking down on...
Last week, Trump picked the prominent vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head HHS. Dr. Oz unsuccessfully ran for the Senate from Pennsylvania.
Oh, unsuccessfully ran in the Senate in Pennsylvania. Who beat him? Who beat him? Does anybody want to take a guess before they say it? Because it's so great. It's so fucking great. It's so good. It's so fucking good.
I have no idea.
John fucking
Oh,
Fetterman.
Fetterman. That's right. The bald dude with the sweater. He's the one that beat him. Yeah.
The guy who got hit with the fucking stroke gun.
Yep. But I mean, that's the reason why the people were voting for him was because he was like, campaigning as this uber to the left, of Bernie Sanders progressive. And then we had another Dr. Phil pretty much with this guy.
I appreciate that, California. I got the article now. We will definitely give that a little gander because that's interesting. And I mean, you know what the best part about that is because it's MSNBC, regardless of people's political orientation, they're gonna be like, yeah, well, fuck them. MSNBC sucks anyways. And that's just shitty because any other time, like when it's like some conservative talking head on YouTube or whatever, and they're getting, removed or whatever the case is, it's it's basically like, we need to defend this guy. We need to fucking we gotta protect freedom of speech, and like they go fucking gung ho, like tiki torches. Well, not tiki torches. I guess that was a bit far, but like torches and pitchforks, and they're down to fucking slide, dude. They're down to slide for King Von, and whenever it's like somebody who's actually deserving.
Right.
Just interesting.
Yep.
Comcast needs that money, though. They do. Comcast does need that money because a lot of people are not doing the cable thing anymore, and a lot of people are finding other internet solutions and kind of like paying the price of dealing with a fucking Verizon home internet or even doing like Starlink. Ugh.
Yep, they sure are.
Sorry. For those people who have to use Starlink because you're in a crazy ass area, sorry, you can't help it. But for the people who can choose and you choose that, Comcast should buy Twitch. No. Customer service on Twitch already sucks. We don't need it to be Comcast level. No. Dude, I'd rather fucking steak buy this shit. I would rather I take that back. That'd be fucking terrible. That'd be even worse.
Yeah.
In 2022, backer of privatizing Medicare.
Yeah,
we are
let's
joined
privatize
by
Medicare.
Dr. Robert Steinbrook, director of
privatizing the healthcare
Health
industry has worked out so great for America.
In these 2 minutes we have left, Dr. Steinbrook, talk about the significance of Oz if he's approved to head CMS.
Hassan ruined Twitch. Dude, that shit cracks me up. Everyone's trying to run with that narrative that Hassan ruined Twitch.
No, if anything, he's making it better. We need more people like him out there.
Really has nothing to do.
Well, no, because there's all the people trying to spin like the adpocalypse shit. That's and like numerous people, even a couple people who don't even like Hassan were like, yeah, like I don't like Hassan, but there's no adpocalypse.
Also has regulatory structures. Dr. Oz is a celebrity physician. He's promoted various treatments and supplements of a dubious
Asmongold. Yeah, but isn't Asmongold on fucking
CMS is about?
Isn't he going to kick?
And it remains.
I thought he had announced something about
he could be
kick.
Effective in this position if he's confirmed. The one thing I'll mention is that Dr. Oz, specific to CMS, he's a supporter of Medicare Advantage and increasing privatization of Medicare. Medicare Advantage already covers about 54% of people under Medicare, and we think that's the wrong way to go.
So, and another thing that I'm sure he's going to talk about, or maybe if he doesn't. So, besides privatizing Medicare, another thing that they're going to do is they're going to make a lot of cuts to the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. And the reason I said AKA is because, unfortunately, so many people just hated and resented Obama for whatever reason it may have been, right? Like, I'm not going to be one of those libs that are like, everyone hated him just because he's black. Like, no, there were some people who hated him, such as myself, because he was a fucking, like, neocon and, in sheep's clothing.
That's right.
We'd like to see traditional Medicare strengthened so that there will be a level playing field. Medicare Advantage often overcharges the federal government, and it's strengthening it.
Oh yeah, but no. So they're gonna be making cuts in removing people who are 26, up to 26, being able to be covered under their parents' health care. Pre-existing conditions for insurance, that's going to be cut So if you have a pre-existing condition, you're pretty much going to be fucked up the ass, no lubrication. And a lot of people are already starting to freak out. Maybe next episode I'll have a couple of particular stories that I want to bring up to show that. But yeah, a lot of people are already starting to freak out and starting to be like, wait, Obamacare and ACA are the same thing. And yeah, if this piece of shit ends up getting to be put in, where Trump wants him to, we're going to see an even worse healthcare system in America, which I didn't think that was ever going to be possible to say. But here we are.
Making it even more lucrative for private insurers is not the way to go.
Oh, he didn't say anything about what I was talking about, so good thing I went on that tangent. But yeah, so basically the gist of this, a big plan for the Project 2025 agenda, like we had talked about before in another episode, we're going to be seeing a lot of austerity politics. We're going to be seeing cuts to specifically social programs, anything that is beneficial to people, they're going to see cuts to. However, we're always going to have money for what? What is that, you ask?
Wars.
Well, check this out. What's this headline, Jimmy? Biden administration announces $275 million aid package for Ukraine. $275 million.
Yeah, more wars.
I wonder what $275 million as an aid package for America would do.
Probably.
Overseas now. More help is on the way for Ukraine. The Biden administration today announcing a new $275 million military aid package for the country. This, of course, comes as Ukraine is bracing for Russian retaliation after firing American-made long-range missiles into Russia for the first time. And while Ukraine braces for that possible attack, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv has reopened after temporarily closing its doors. ABC's Patrick Reevell is in Ukraine with more.
Hi, Kana. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv today took the rare step of closing temporarily, saying that it had specific information.
I want to ask you something.
Missile attack on the capital. The embassy saying that its staff were sheltering in place.
Why do you think Biden did this?
Then followed suit, and it came as Ukraine.
Particularly now.
What do you mean?
Why do you think Biden gave the authorization to do this at this particular moment? Like, why do you think that Biden is like, hey, yo, before I leave office, I'm going to send them fucking $300 million?
My only guess would be because Trump isn't going to do this anymore.
Okay.
That was my only guess when I heard about this. What was
okay? No, that's fair enough. Does that include money for Ukrainian healthcare? No, brother. More than 50%. I think it was like 60% of people in Ukraine want them to negotiate a peace treaty, and the government's ignoring it. At one point in time, we were being told that Ukraine had the upper hand, and people were saying, okay, we have the upper hand, we have the power to negotiate, let's fucking negotiate and stop getting people killed. And you know what the United States and NATO and everybody else was saying? Hey, man, you got this, dude. You fucking withstood this shit, bro. Like, you can take a punch, man. Keep going. You're doing great. But truth is, they were gassing them the fuck up.
Yep.
But no, I mean, your guess is definitely true. It's definitely one of those things where, like, it's a posture move for the Democratic base, saying like, hey, Ukraine's probably not going to get any help for a while, so like I got to do something. But take a look at the fact that before he's leaving office, the first thing he did, major legislation that, he enforced and action that he took, wasn't anything to address issues at home, anything of that nature. Something to maybe stop and impede the Trump administration's transition. None of that. It's, we're going to send money, Jack, to Ukraine.
Yep.
We're going to win the war on Medicare.
Yep.
is bracing for Russia
Got
to
the Malar.
retaliate over the first strikes with American ATACMS missiles into Russia. The embassy has now said, though, that it's resumed normal service and will be open again as usual on Thursday, suggesting that the immediate threat may have passed. But the threat of Russian retaliation definitely remains. Ukraine today also appears to have fired Western missiles into Russia for the second time in 2 straight days, now launching British Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Video appears to show them hitting in Russia's Kursk region that borders Ukraine and where Russia is trying to drive out Ukrainian troops with the help of North Korean forces. Russian officials have signaled that they will respond in some way. Vladimir Putin yesterday...
Have you seen the shit where people are trying to come out and say that, like, North Korean soldiers aren't even there?
No, I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, there were some people that were trying to generate that shit. I probably shouldn't even be saying anything to, like, garner it any attention because it doesn't really deserve any.
Okay.
But like there was a lot of conspiracy theories that people were just trying ultimately it was posturing from Putin and North Korea trying to basically use like fear intimidation and show that there's a new coalition and like a Eastern version of NATO, you know, the USSR. And that's specifically propaganda that's being used again that's trying to create almost like a Red Scare 2.0. Because funny enough, people still consider this guy to be a communist, and people still consider Kim Jong-un to be a communist, which they're not.
Nuclear threats, lowering the threshold for using a nuclear weapon. The Pentagon says that it sees no sign that Russia is preparing to do that. France today also dismissing the threats as rhetoric. And here in Ukraine, though, they believe Russia will retaliate, most likely with some kind of major missile attack. The question is how and when. Kana?
That's certainly a scary question. Patrick Reevell there in Ukraine. Our thanks to you.
So, is there anything you wanted to ask or talk about?
No.
In
This is
regards to
good so
that?
far. I'm excited to see where this is going with this.
All right. So as we see, we're dealing with a lot of cuts to essential programs. Meanwhile, military is getting hand over fist after the Pentagon just failed another audit where they were unable to account for like $872 billion, by the way. And they were just given more money. We're going to talk about the economy, the broconomy. It's the broconomy, stupid, as my boy Presidential Bill Clinton once said. The economy's stupid. You got to think about it. It's like a cigar. You take a nice long hit, then you ash. Take a shot of bourbon. A lot of people have a misconception on the economy, especially in the United States, right? Ultimately, the way that we see it, we have companies. The companies pay good money to ensure that they get these products that are either like ethically sourced or don't use child labor or exploitative labor practices. But time and time again, we've seen that happen, whether it was the Chiquita Banana Company or the Chiquita Fruit Company, rather, who had, you know, an entire mercenary squad, and they were responsible for the banana wars, a lot of stuff that happened in Panama. They were part of the reason why we saw the expansion of the Panama Canal and the controlling of the Panama Canal from the United States. They definitely played a huge role in that. Coca-Cola had mercenary death squads where they used to go out and literally exterminate socialists and communists and people who were leftists and different Latin companies. So different companies all over the place have had a history of these death squads to ensure that they snuff out competition, control the market, basically take out and extract resources while controlling the inflow of any goods or resources to replace that into the economy, if they so choose. So we're going to be talking about the free market because that is something that often gets brought up by a lot of broconomists, right? They'll tell you, man, capitalism's great because you have a lot of innovation. You have a lot of competition. You have the free market that breeds innovation and competition. It's the perfect system. If we didn't have the free market, we wouldn't have PlayStation. We wouldn't have Xbox. We wouldn't have this. We wouldn't have that. And we've even talked a little bit about free market solutions in previous episodes. And ultimately, you know, my bias lays along the lines of you can't call it a free market when there's already fixed conditions and fixed supply and demand, as well as government subsidies. It's not free at that point. At that point, it's very much orchestrated. It's very much controlled, and it's very much centralized. So we're gonna have our boy Richard Wolff. We're gonna be watching a lot of Richard Wolff throughout these future streams because I think he's a great introduction to the ideals of socialism. He's very light. He's not very extreme, and his language is kind of easy to digest.
Yep, I agree.
The people who talk about markets like to often use the word free. What they seem to mean when they've thought about it or explained it.
Bro, he always looks so fucking mad.
It's a market that isn't regulated by some political authority. A market with no rules, no regulations, where buyers and sellers confront one another and bargain and reach a mutually agreeable rate of exchange.
And no regulations. That's one thing we always hear about too, right? People always want to remove regulations because according to some people, regulations constrain innovation and businesses' ability to expand. When really my counter argument to it is, well, if it's really a good business, they wouldn't have to worry about that shit. They'd be making enough money to not even worry. Like, shut the fuck up. I thought it was survival of the fittest. I thought part of the free market was people deciding what's worth investing and what's worth keeping afloat. Right. It's not you just because you think you have some great fucking product. Like, sorry, Elon Musk, you wouldn't have Tesla if it wasn't for everybody's tax money bailing your fucking bad ideas out time and time and time and time again.
Right.
Each for whatever it is they have and each for whatever it is they want. I get that idea, but here I'm going to be an economic historian, something I have taught all my adult life as a professor in the United States and something I share with other professors of economic history. The free market that I just described has never existed. It is a figment of the imagination of people. It is also a wildly utopian image. We don't have that. Every market that I have ever studied, whether it's ancient Greece right up to the present, is full of regulations.
I wonder what that is, because ultimately a lot of the bro economists, they always love Greeks and Romans and, you know, civilization.
Notion that we can have a market without regulations is refuted by the fact that
it's almost like regulations are essential for society.
Created as the way to distribute goods, it has immediately had so many bad effects that regulations had to be brought in to counter them. For example, and it's really important to understand this, in a free market, wages can be very low. Capitalist pays as little as he can get away with. And if they're desperate people who need to survive, they will work for next to nothing. This creates a vast population of very poor people, often in capitalism. And guess what? We bring in a regulation. It's called a minimum wage. So you
love me some Greeks. Hey, man, you know what I'm saying? I'm down with Socrates. I'm down with Pluto. What about you, Jimmy?
Hell yeah. I love Greek mythology. It's one of my favorites.
And he's bringing up a good point about this too, right? Because ultimately, because of Reaganomics, a lot of people have bought into this concept that's been made of trickle-down economics, right? They think if the people who already have a lot, if they get more, that they'll have so much more that just by, not even by choice, but by default, that they'll just have to spread some of that because they couldn't possibly just want to sit and accumulate that wealth. Oh, no. They would never do that.
No.
So I think unfortunately, just a lot of people have that by default, and they fail to understand that, like, their they're making less than somebody, let's say, working at, In-N-Out in California or whatever, and they always use that. Like, some burger flipper shouldn't make more than me.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's like, man, no, you don't need to get mad at that burger flipper. You need to get mad at your boss and be like, hey, we all work really fucking hard, and people that work in like the fast food industry make more than us. So either you start paying us more, or we're gonna go work in that fucking industry and make more money.
Right.
Because if you do it as a collective, if you start telling everybody in your office, like, hey man, these motherfuckers are making more than us, and I feel like we do a lot more work, right? We should get more too. Not attacking the person that works in the food industry, focusing your attention on your boss for not giving you more. Because like he's saying, the whole point of capitalism is seeing how much they can pay you that allows you to not starve to death. So then that way you don't try to eat them. That's it. That's it. They don't care about anything else. They don't give a fuck if you're homeless, because guess what? You'll live in your car and you'll still go to work, motherfucker. You'll get a membership at Planet Fitness, and you'll make a TikTok about, hey, this is the day in the life of somebody living in the car working 3 jobs, and they'll have a Wall Street Journal article about you because you're a fucking inspirational story about how you're a teacher and a bartender, and then you have an OnlyFans account that generates like $5,000 to $10,000 a month, but you still can't afford to fucking live in an apartment because our fucking system is so goddamn broken.
Yep.
You can't do
I can
that.
preach.
Here's another example. Some companies get into a position where they're the only company producing something, and they can jack up the prices because you got nowhere else to go. Think of your local utility. You don't have 6 utility companies to choose from.
Exactly. That's another thing that always pisses me off when people try to say that there's competition. It's like, okay, try to get like a different internet provider in your city. See how many ISPs there are. Compared to like the late 90s, early 2000s when that shit was first starting. Because I remember in my city alone, I don't know about you, because obviously at one point you were living out in the desert and shit, but like in my city, which was a pretty big city, there was at least 7 to 10 different fucking internet companies. And they were constantly fighting to try to get you to like be one of their members. And I remember specifically there was one company that was like, hey, you get your internet through us, I'm throwing a little bit of AOL for free. You remember them discs they used to send you in the mail all the time and shit? They'd be like, yeah, we got this free 100 hours, man.
Yeah.
Check it out. Pretty cool. And then now it's just literally, you have like 1 or 2 if you're lucky. And one of them is decent, the other one sucks balls.
You don't have 6,
you can only use one in one area.
Uh-huh.
So those companies jack up the prices. You know what we have as a result?
You know what's crazy? Hezbollah has fiber optic internet.
The antitrust division of the Justice Department to break up the monopolies, because if you let the market go, the competition among many becomes a few, and then they do what they always do, and in come the regulations. There's a good reason why we have regulations, because markets have undesirable effects. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Undesirable effects. What do you mean, my guy?
Let's remember what a market is. A market says that there are goods that people want. Let's suppose ice cream cones, for lack of a better example. Ice cream cones. Let's suppose there are 20 ice cream cones that are available for sale. And let's suppose that there are 50 people who want an ice cream cone. So the supply of ice cream cones, 20, and the demand for ice cream cones, 50. What happens? Very easy to understand. Let's suppose the sellers of ice cream cones are ready to sell them at 20 cents a pop. Well, the richest people out of the 50 immediately realize there's only 20 cones and there's 50 of us. But I've got a lot of money, so I'm going to offer 25 cents. Oh no, says another rich person. I'm not going to stand by while he gets it for 25. I can afford 30. And another rich one said, well, I can afford 50. You see what happens? The price gets bid up. As we teach in economics, the demand being greater than the supply, the price goes up. The idea being those with the most money can keep raising the price because they can afford to pay. But as the price goes up, the poorer people have to drop out of the race because they can't afford $2.18 for a cone.
That's crazy. So wait a minute, like when these companies specifically do what's known as like price fixing, which is supposed to be, illegal, but what are laws? But they specifically, they'll have one company that comes out and they're like, hey, our product is seeing an increase in demand. Our supply is getting hit because of XYZ. So we're going to raise the price by 15 cents, 20 cents, right? Every other company is going to see that. And because the majority of them are owned either by the same company or it just happens to be the one corporation that's in competition, they go, well, shit, we need to make more money. So we're going to raise it to just about the same. And it's a price example. It's price leading. I think that's what they call it now too, because price fixing is illegal. I think they just changed the name of it. It's like price leadership or some stupid shit like that.
Price control.
Yeah. ISPs are territorial too. If you want Verizon VOs but live in Comcast territory, you can only get Comcast there. No, exactly. Like specific zones, specific places only have contracts. And again, kind of removes the idea of freedom of choice, which is another retort that you often see from a lot of people that are on the conservative side, or even more disgusting, neolibs.
Guess what happens? When the dust settles, the 20 cones go to the people willing to spend the most money to bid up the price, because they don't care, because they're rich. They'll pay $5 a cone. In other words, what markets do is distribute whatever is scarce to the people with the money. The most money wins. Well, if the market is a game in which those with the most money win, then it's a game that favors the people with the most money. This is not rocket science, friends. The market is a system that favors the rich, which is why the rich love markets.
The rich
You mean to tell me the people that can afford the increase of prices for goods are completely fine with a system that allows for the increase of price of goods?
Right, you're telling me that the people that can afford all of this like it?
Yeah. And it's really funny because there's a big popular meme that's going around where it's like a big ass suburban house and big ass lifted trucks and shit like that. It's like, bro, have you seen the price of eggs lately? Meanwhile, they got like 4 or 5 cars, a golf cart, pool in the back.
Ridiculous, I swear.
But yeah. So overall, I think, once again, shout out to Richard Wolff. A great explanation of the free market and the myth of it. And I think it's important to be able to have that talking point because, again, this is the segment of the show of talking points against your annoying ass uncle for Thanksgiving. It's important to be able to hit them with that shit because when you start talking about that, they hate it. They're like, oh, wait, what? Regulation? Well, people need to save money so they can afford the goods.
Yep.
Maybe they should just live in their car. Maybe they should work 4 jobs. 3 isn't enough. And then they just start slowly becoming more and more and more and more and more unhinged.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing. Because as I've said before, and this is something I brought up with Jimmy numerous times, like when you're having to talk to somebody that you are aware of has a specific political motive, especially one that leans towards, fascist ideology, nationalistic ideology, you have to keep them on the defensive. Because the moment that you stand on your heels and the moment you start giving in a little bit, it's over. Because they're never going to change their mind and you should automatically know you're not going to change the mind of somebody like that. It's just not going to happen. It's not possible. They're going in there specifically to try to get the people that might be in your orbit or in your chat to start going, well, hey, that guy's kind of making sense. That guy's kind of onto something.
Right.
So really, what you have to do is just make them show themselves how unhinged they are. You know, when they start talking about shit like immigration, how we were showing, you ask them, okay, so what's the solution to immigration? And if they say mass deportation, how are you going to achieve that?
Right.
How are you going to afford that? Do you understand what that's going to do to the labor force, which is already struggling?
It's like
Make
mental
them
chess.
have to answer.
Right. It's like mental chess. You just always got to be the one in the lead, making sure that they're defending themselves against your shit. That's the hard part. Because they'll
Yeah.
pop off with some fucking shit, and you're just like you get automatically defensive, and then that side tangent, yeah, it's rough out there. It's
Yeah.
rough out there
Well, I
for
mean,
getting stuff.
they always pick like a handful of specific topics, right? It'll be things like immigration, it'll be things like race, it'll be things like religion, because they're able to get their talking points out in a very quick, in a very like short fashion, as to where a lot of times leftist response to those issues are very complex. It's not a black and white issue so much as it's a gray one. So automatically, when you're having like a debate type landscape, you're going to see that happen. I'm going to go ahead and play a video real
Oh,
quick. I'm
yeah,
going to say
go to the
goodnight to my
kiddo.
to my
Yep,
daughter.
go.
The world economy is very, very unequal. And I don't just mean that within countries, but between countries. We can see this with the skyrocketing wealth of a small handful of billionaire oligarchs. According to Oxfam, the world's 5 richest men more than doubled their wealth from 2020 to 2023, while 5 billion people on Earth were made poorer. Meanwhile, from 2020 to 2021, the richest 1% gained about 63% of the new wealth that was created, and the bottom 90% only gained 10% of the new wealth created. Oxfam emphasized the enormous wealth gap between the global north, the rich countries that developed through colonialism, and the global south, the formerly colonized
I was like,
countries.
go now.
74% of the world's billionaire wealth is in the global north.
74% of billionaire wealth is in the global north. Okay, keep that in mind.
Wait, say that again one more time for the people in the back.
74% of billionaire wealth, the world's billionaire wealth, the world, the global north controls 74%. 74.
Okay.
74. That's a pretty high number. Pretty high number because, you know, we always hear about, especially from Republicans, we don't drill enough oil. We don't have resources. We don't have gold, brother. We don't have it. And so it's like, okay, we don't. But I mean, like when it comes to drilling and shit, we totally do. We've been drilling the fuck out of our own land for a while now. Like production continues to go up and up and up, regardless of, you know, if you're a Democrat or Republican in office.
Yeah.
But
which is crazy.
with
We
that
don't
being,
even use our own oil. We fucking outsource that shit.
yeah, we sell it. Yeah, no, exactly. We sell it. We don't even put it in our reserves. We don't do it. We're not trying to replenish our reserves that we've used, especially during COVID. None of that shit. It's just like, yeah, whatever. But you have to start asking yourself, right? Which is, okay, if we don't have those resources and the major parts of our economy, whether it be the tech industry, just basic goods even, where do these resources come from? And the majority of them come from the global south, which this video is going to touch on. But it's just interesting to see specifically 74% for the north. I missed a lot of shit in chat. Let's see. Electoral politics on national level is pure theater. Only change will come from the local level and parts of the state level ballot initiatives. Yeah, no. Basically, the national level is a fucking joke. National level is a joke. I think a lot of people ultimately have given up on the national level. This most recent election is a great reflection of the overall mindset that the American has towards nationalistic politics. People are tired, and people are, at least, the one thing that I think we should see as a good sign is that people are becoming more hopeful about how important local politics is, right? that message is getting across. There's a lot more people who are becoming aware of that. And again, that was also shown in the most recent election. So I don't disagree with you on that. The threat of mass deportation is enough of a scare tactic. Well, yeah, but then you add in everything else that they're talking about, and it's just monumental. You need to be talking to workers in shipping industries, railroad industry, air freight industries, not the union bosses, the workers, to get them to shut shit down. No, 100%. I think the workers need to be focused on, again, a lot of the union leadership. I won't speak to that. I mean, the most I know is just about, some of the speeches they give, whether it was, what's his name of the Teamsters going up for the RNC, and then the UAW guy that was out there swinging for the Democrats. I only know surface level stuff about them. I haven't investigated or researched them enough to necessarily know a lot of their politics beyond, aesthetic surface level bullshit.
And 69% of the total global wealth is in the global north. Just around 31% is in the global south, despite the fact that the global south has 79% of the world population. According to this estimate, a rather conservative.
79% of the global population. 79% of the global population is in the south, but 74% of the wealth is in the north. So that's another statistic that just kind of makes it very self-aware. There is no hiding. There is no spin you can really put on that.
Estimate. And when you look at the GDP per capita of developing countries, that is the output of all goods and services produced divided by the number of people, you can see that the gap between poor countries and rich countries has not really shifted in the past 20 years if you exclude China from the data. And as I'll be speaking about today in detail, China is the big exception to this trend. And the way that China was able to do this is through a world historic campaign of economic development based on a state-led economic model in which government control of banking and finance could direct loans, very favorable loans at low interest rates, to strategic industries to develop the forces of production in the country, to move up the global value chain to more.
Whoa. Wait, you mean to tell me there's a government out there that's like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to fucking tell banks and investment bankers and all these other motherfuckers, you can do your thing. All right, you can do your thing. But if you for 1 second think that your money's going to go anywhere besides trying to fucking produce and build infrastructure, then we'll fucking jail you. I mean, we saw numerous headlines coming out. There's a lot of, obviously in America, there's always a lot of anti-China sentiment. And I remember specifically seeing for a long time, like, another Chinese billionaire. I can't remember if it was like 2 or 3 years ago, but there was, I think it was like 12 different Chinese billionaires had ended up disappearing or, getting jailed.
Yeah.
And everybody was freaking out about it. But then you end up finding out they're like, yeah, these motherfuckers were basically like trying to bribe and like being really corrupt. And I'm sorry, like, I'm not saying China's great or anything, but I was like, hey, yo, that's kind of fucking cool, dude. The government coming in and be like, no, you're trying to fuck people over, dude. No,
Yeah.
we're going to we're building roads. We're fucking building dams. We're building water treatment facilities. We're training our people to be ready for the future.
Right. I mean, even in like South Korea, they do the same thing. I think there was like a company that was really corrupt, stealing a bunch of money. They just shut the fucking company down and put the CEO in jail. Like, can we do that here in America? We just fine them like 0.001% of their like monthly profit and then just let them continue on and then change their name if they want to. It's fucking crazy. I wish that, yeah, we could be like China and all the other fucking countries when it comes to corrupt companies.
Well, and this is something that we can definitely do in the future too. But like one of the biggest programs that China's been taking part in is expanding the rail system. And one of the unfortunate problems with that is that you do see like a lot of urbanization type policies, right? Where like you're seeing people getting either flooded out or kicked out by the government from rural areas and being forced to start living in these cities,
Right.
which isn't fair to them. But one good aspect, and this isn't, the dismissal of those people, but like one good aspect is you do see an expansion of the rail system so people can get around China a lot quicker, a lot safer, not the heavily reliance on cars. Because ultimately, China has been doing a lot to get in alliance with the Paris Accord, which people can have their quarrels about, the Green Initiative or whatever the case may be. But I think the Paris Accord is it's not even doing enough. So I think it's at least somewhat reasonable to be like, yeah, we should at least like try to strive for that if we're going to do anything, right? Like if we're going to be realistic.
Yep.
Advanced forms of production, and furthermore, the Chinese government, through state control of the commanding heights of the economy, including infrastructure, telecommunications, public transportation, health, and education, China was able to subsidize, the state subsidized all of this production,
I think honestly
keeping costs
they're
very
just
low
trying to fucking
in order to become competitive internationally,
get a way to be able to
reduce
backdoor
the inequality between China and the wealthy countries.
I think right now what's happening is a lot of different people in the government are trying to push for a lot more like anti-transparency, more anti-whistleblowing type shit, and they want to be able to start getting into people's search histories, and they want to start seeing who might be enemies and who they need to keep more tabs on. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the government is trying to force this sale of Google Chrome. I know they've been on Apple's ass for a long fucking time.
Yep.
So who knows? Time will tell.
I explained all this in a separate video, which I will link to in the description below, in which I discuss how China became the world's manufacturing superpower.
We need to be talking to people outside of our comfort zone instead of preaching to the choir. No, for sure. That's what we do a lot of times on here. I mean, the past 5 or 6 episodes, I mean, I have numerous friends that come from all different walks of life just because of where I grew up. And we often do in here have conversations, and I think really people need to realize, at least when it comes to the political realm right now, in the day and age that we face, the only counter that ever works against fascism is economic populism from a socialist perspective. That is the only time that fascism has been defeated. The only time throughout history. And I don't even want to say the Democratic Party needs to get to that, because I just don't have faith in that institution. I really fucking don't. So whomever it may be, good luck. You know what I mean? But yeah, we definitely need to start focusing a lot more on the idea of being like, okay, yeah, we need to address the fact that people don't have money in their bank accounts, people don't have good health care, people don't have good roads to drive on, people don't have good and safe schools to go to. Student loan relief, that should be maybe not like a day one priority, but it should be a top priority. I think the idea of punishing people who are trying to advance their education, become more educated workers, that's stupid. If anything, you should incentivize it. If we're going to be doing government subsidies, we should be doing government subsidies for programs like that. Like, hey, do you want to go to college? Do you want to, better yourself, better your education, make your community better, make your state better, make your country better, all in turn? Well, then fucking here. We're going to help have bonus programs. Like, instead of having these very strict scholarship-based programs where they specifically only go after people of, different traits, whether it be based off of academics, whether it be based off of sports, whether it be based off of race, whether it be based off of income. Just make it to where, regardless of any of that shit, you get guaranteed financial assistance.
Right.
And make it enough to where people can afford to either live on campus or off campus, adjust it to the standard rate of living. That would be something I would love for my tax money to go to. I would love for that shit to happen. I mean, it's never going to in the system we have now, but that'd be fucking awesome. Just think.
But today I'm going to talk about the other countries in the global south. Now, for centuries, since the rise of European colonialism, the global north countries concentrated in the west have...
Don't tell a real hunter he needs regulations. Tell me you need to protect the water that deer drink. Well, I mean, I disagree with that. I think you need to be like, yeah, and the way that you can protect the water that deer drink and we drink and everybody has is through regulations. I mean, shit, dude, fucking even Tricky Dick Nixon, as big of a piece of shit as he was, even he understood that shit. And there are a lot of people who are like the Joe Rogan bros, who, even though they may not like to say things where like, yo, I'm like pro regulation, a lot of the shit they say is pro regulation. They're just so scared of the word. It's just ultimately on people to be able to describe it in a way that's not scary, that's easy to digest. It isn't coming from a place of condescension. Like, you can't be sitting there and be like, oh, you stupid dumb hick, or, you know, whatever the case is. You have to be patient, you have to be understanding. People can't just change their ideology in one day. It's a slow process. And ultimately that's one of the many factors that the left has been losing out on the 18 to 35 demographic, is because a lot of people that are on the right, they understand when they're recruiting, they have to be patient. They have to focus on, you know, just listening to the person and not judging them and not doing any of that shit, because they know that you know, that person's getting it from the other side. They fucking know it is. Because if you're a leftist, you know how fucking cringe and annoying we can be.
Have dominated industrial production, and they created a global capitalist system in which the formerly colonized countries in the South largely export raw materials and low value added products that involve a lot of low paid labor in industries like textiles and agriculture. So this is very labor intensive production. These countries are in the periphery of the world system, and they export those commodities and low value added products to the wealthy imperialist countries in the core of the world system, whose economies largely are based on exporting high value added products like advanced technologies and manufactured goods, and they get paid much more. And because they face so little competition from the poor countries in the periphery, they essentially have monopolies. Therefore, their wage.
So I just want to point something out, because you were talking about, like, you know, people need to get out their comfort zones. And I see that argument made a lot. And a lot of times when that argument's being made, it's kind of being made in the way that you're putting it, where it's like, people who are leftists need to get out of their comfort zones, but people who are on the right don't. And we have to cater to their fucking fears, and we have to cater to their wants, when that's literally what's gotten us to the point to where we are now, right? Like, the Democratic Party is a great example. The Democratic Party is always doing this thing where it's like, yeah, like, we could talk about, you know, institutional racism and like intersectionality and things like that. We could talk about that because that's part of, you know, what our base is interested in. But instead, we're going to do the 2020 Trump border bill, and we're going to do austerity politics as well. And like, you know, and obviously this is anecdotal for me, but in my own personal experience, talking to people who are Trump voters and, you know, self-prescribed libertarians, or even like anarcho-capitalists, or whatever the case is, like, even when I've used language that they're often fearful of, like 9 times out of 10, even if they're just saying it, they ultimately are like, you know what, I get where you're coming from, and we end up agreeing on the majority of things. So I think, like, yeah, there are going to be some people who shut down, but if that person's first response to hearing something that contradicts their ideology is to shut down and not give in, then that person is never probably going to change their mind anyways. Like, it's one thing if they try to dismiss it, because then that at least shows, whether it be like consciously or subconsciously, that like, they're like, okay, well, like, I heard your argument, but like, let me tell you why I think, you know, you might be wrong. But if they just come at it from a point of like trying to shut it down, then it's just, they're not operating from good faith. They just want you to concede onto their territory. They want you to use their perspective and their viewpoints.
Oof.
Don't talk to a Trumper about politics or religion first. Talk about something relatable. But I mean, if you talk to a Trumper about anything, you have to talk about the economy. You have to talk about shit. You have to talk about regulations. You have to talk like
The
they're
national
and
debt.
it's all, yeah, and like, and it's all political. So like, and that's the problem. Like, the American bastardization of like what politics is has turned into like culture war. And obviously the Democratic Party is responsible for that, because they've cared more just about identity politics and diversity for the sake of diversity. And they've made it that way because the right continues to move to the right. And Democrats throughout time, especially after the civil rights movement was over in conception, during the 60s and 70s, they're just basically like, all right, we're done. We did what we were supposed to do. We won. We beat racism. Yay. But yeah, no, you definitely start off with non-hot stuff. You just bring up the fact, like, yeah, it'd be nice if we could afford groceries, you know, but these companies want to keep making record profits year after year after year after firing people, and
I
more
want to
people can't
meet
afford groceries.
I want to meet y'all fucking Trump supporters. I swear, every time a Trump supporter that I know comes near me, they're like, they put their hands together and they're like, "Oh, Jimmy's here. Let's fucking go." They're ready for
Yo,
fucking
every
debates.
time I talk, every time I bump into a Trump supporter, like out in the wild, right?
Yeah.
Especially because I live in Trumpville. Like this is straight up Trumpville.
Uh-huh.
Every time I bump into one, you know what they're saying? Yeah, well, you know, them trans people or them immigrants or like it's always just like very hostile, very divisive, very like step on your toes just like type shit. And obviously depending on what state you live in, it's going to be different. Like back in Illinois, a lot of Trump supporters were kind of like they were kind of too pussy to be outright with it unless you lived in a town that I did, which was like it wasn't as big as Chicago, but like it was big enough to where people thought they were country, but they really weren't.
Yeah.
And so it was just like a lot of notion because they knew like in Illinois specifically, whether it was Chicago or my city, like the KKK tried coming through my city, and motherfuckers went in and beat the shit out of them. So like anytime motherfuckers come in through my city trying to talk that wild shit, like there's a lot of like anti-fascist, a lot of anti-nationalist fucking groups
Yeah.
that are out there. And I'm
Yeah.
not advocating violence. I have a
I
degree
am.
in communication, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that you don't. I'm just saying that like even if you do have like a degree in communications, my question is when did you get that degree? How do you apply college-based education to real life practice? Because those are two separate things. I'm related to a lot of Trump supporters. They will listen to harder stuff if they trust you and think you're sincere and not in the cult. Yeah, no, exactly. And that's a lot of shit that like we've been talking about in this stream.
Yep.
And that's and not even just in the stream, but like that's always the approach that I've taken from. I mean, like at the end of the day, even as annoying as I can find some of the Trump supporters, again, I have friends who are Trump supporters. I have friends who are libertarian. I have family members who are both. Like I come from a biracial family. And I've had to hear just about fucking everything under the goddamn sun, especially being biracial. I've had to hear a lot of the Trump resentment that they have towards people who aren't, you know, applicable for the one drop theory type shit. So, like, I get what you're saying. And again, I'm not saying that you're wrong. It's just you can't. If your goal is to actually get them to change their own mind, you can't give in and concede on their framing. You can't be worried about their feelings. You just have to be open and honest and genuine because that's what people respond to. You can talk till you're blue in the face, but like if you stand on your shit and not only like talk the talk, but if you put action behind that shit, then people will they'll follow it. They'll believe you. They'll feel that you're sincere. One of the greatest examples to use it from the election, like Rashida Tlaib, right? She kind of adopted the Bernie Sanders principle of like, regardless of what crowd that she's at, she speaks to them in the same way. She talks about the shit that matters.
Wages are significantly higher, therefore the cost of their exports are significantly higher, and they get richer and richer, while the countries in the global south in the periphery are constantly competing for exporting these low value-added products and commodities, and there are many other producers, so their compensation is very low, they're operating in very small margins, and wages are extremely low. Now, I don't want to scare people off with economic theory, but today is a slightly more theoretical analysis.
Nerd.
And I'm going to talk about a very important economic concept that is known as the Prebisch-Singer hypothesis. And this was popularized by an Argentine economist, a development economist named Raúl Prebisch, who was the founding Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, which was created in 1964. This is the 60th anniversary. And the goal was to try to create more favorable economic conditions for formerly colonized countries in the global south so they can catch up in economic development. And the argument of Raúl Prebisch and also a German economist named Hans Singer, their argument was that in the long run, there will be a decline in the terms of trade for natural resource exporting countries. What does that mean? It means that in the long run, the poor countries in the global south, whose economies are based on exporting raw materials, will get compensated less than the advanced countries that are exporting manufactures. They will get compensated more in the global north. Therefore, the global south countries will have less hard currency that they need to pay for the imports of capital goods and machine parts and technologies that they need to develop their economies.
But it's so interesting because I could have sworn that anytime, especially when conservatives bring up, Latin America because they want to talk about communism, they say, all these countries are falling apart because of communism and socialist policies and blah 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 blah. But it's like, no, you fucking idiot. Like, if you actually knew anything that you're talking about, even if you knew about your own system that you're defending, then you'd shut the fuck up and know that you're just full of shit.
So this reinforces a cycle in which the rich countries with more advanced economies become richer over time, whereas the poor countries with the less advanced economies simply become stagnant or poor over time because their economy.
Also, I'm sorry, Jimmy, was there anything that you wanted to add to what I had said earlier? I realized that I went off on a tangent. I wasn't trying to hijack nothing.
No, you're good. I'm over here with my fork and knife because you're cooking.
Bad.
Economies are entirely dependent on exporting low compensated, low value added products and raw materials. For people more interested in economic theory, Prebic pointed out that manufactured goods and secondary goods are price elastic, while raw materials and natural resources are generally more inelastic. Therefore, as income increases in the world, the demand for natural resources increases, but not as greatly as the demand for manufactures. But the point is that the structure of global capitalism, of the world economy, is set up in a way where the wealthy countries in the imperial core get richer and richer, whereas the developed
and they consolidate, and they have less companies that are trying to compete, and all the resources, instead of going to 10 or 15 different companies, where are they going? To 4 or 5. And that's why you're seeing that such a major increase, because there's more resources that are getting extracted now, especially as, we start improving, drones, AI. It's only going to get more and more, and poverty is only going to increase a lot more. I think I had seen something too about supposedly people living in the global south are the ones that are responsible for controlling those Elon robots. I want to see if I can find a story about that, because I'd love to do an episode about Elon Musk eventually in the future. Okay. But just food for thought.
Developing countries that were formerly colonized are trapped in this cycle of dependency, and this led to the creation of what is known as dependency theory. What this also means is that the countries largely of the global south are very dependent on what is known as commodity supercycles. Therefore, when commodity prices increase in global markets, countries of the global south get better compensation, and they can use the hard currency they receive from their exports in order to invest in industrial production and machine parts and capital goods and margins. What this also leads to is the wealthy imperialist countries try to use political tactics in order to depress the wages of global south nations. We saw a clear example of this when WikiLeaks, the whistleblowing journalism organization, whose founder, Julian Assange, is being imprisoned in Britain, and according to the UN expert on torture, he's being tortured, and the US is trying to throw him in prison for the rest of his life. Well, Assange's WikiLeaks published documents from the US State Department back from 2008 and 2009 that show how the State Department was trying to prevent Haiti, with some of the lowest minimum wages on earth, from raising those minimum wages. In 2008, Haiti's parliament was discussing doubling or tripling the daily minimum wage of 70 Haitian gourds to keep up with inflation, amounting to $1.75 per day. Or
what the fuck?
I know.
$1.75 a day, 22 cents an hour.
Ugh. That's prison wages.
or about 22 cents per hour. And these cables from WikiLeaks show that the U.S. embassy officials were monitoring
the minimum wage,
and they did not want the minimum wage to be increased too much because it would reduce the profit margins of the multinational corporations that were exploiting Haitian garment workers.
$5.
In 2009, there was also a U.S.-backed military coup that overthrew the democratically elected left-wing president of Honduras, which also has extremely low wages. And one of the goals of this was to prevent the government from continuing to raise wages. And this has been referred to as a wage floor. Very low wages in countries like Haiti and Honduras are wage floors set in the global economy. And this leads to what's known as a race for the bottom, where workers in other countries in the global south are pressured to accept inflation eating away at their own real wages and not getting wage rises because of the possibility of companies simply moving to countries with even lower minimum wages like Haiti and Honduras. So if
and this is something that American go ahead, you first.
No, go ahead.
No, you first, please. I've been talking
I was just gonna read comment.
Okay, go ahead.
It just says, okay, good luck with whatever you're trying to achieve here. Just remember, Bubba don't give a shit about Marx, but he does care about fishing in a clean river. Peace. Well, please, if you have a solution where we could talk to Bubba about his clean river, please explain it because, without understanding at least a type of Marxism to give people an option of a solution, how are we supposed to get to anybody? You just going to talk to him about how the river's gross and that you hate people and you want to guillotine them? Because I would really like for you all to show me how you're going to build a guillotine and actually bring the rich people to it. Like this is just we're just giving solutions with this. Like I don't care about Bubba and his river.
Yeah. And ultimately, like a lot of people always bring up, Marxism and a lot of these different talking points, these different words. And a lot of people don't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
They don't know what it
like,
means.
yeah. So, a lot of that is
It's like asking somebody for advice, but never knowing the person doesn't know the answer at all. Like, well, then why are you even asking them? Like, that's the whole point of
Yeah.
asking and getting solutions is to ask people who know things. And I'm sorry, but if Marx knows something, then fuck.
Yeah. But no, I think if you weren't so focused on trying to be condescending, you would understand that like what we're doing here isn't talking about like preaching Marx and quoting Marx. It's about understanding, first of all, that Marxism itself is more of a analysis and critique of capitalism and an understanding of what's possible for the future after it. And ultimately, a lot of people do agree with, whether they're aware or not, with a lot of the fundamental concepts of Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the Red Scare, because like a lot of people are boomers, so like they grew up with all the propaganda, all the 80s movies and shit like that. Communism is scary. Marxism is scary. And that's, a trait that's been kind of inherited by generation after generation.
Right.
But like when you can explain to Bubba that like, well, first of all, Bubba's used to be Marxist Leninist. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you want to start talking about like trying to actually accomplish something, it's about making people realize that at one point Bubba was part of the socialist movement. At one point, Bubba was, the redneck. And what were rednecks? They were people who were literally on the front lines of the labor movement when it was militant, when they were getting massacred.
Right.
So, but you continue to achieve, talking about alien conspiracies and like all that other bullshit, and then talking about like going around preaching about like your degrees and stuff. Because I mean, ultimately, like you're just kind of doing the same shit that you critique Democrats over, which is just like being snobby and condescending.
Right. Like you're
Because
not
that's
gonna
what your
get
comment
anywhere.
was.
We're not gonna get anywhere in this fucking country if we just sit here and complain about things and then talk about aliens. Like at least we're out here trying to do something about it.
The wage floor in these countries increases, it will likely lead to raise hikes in other countries, which will eat into the profit margins of these multinational corporations, many of which are based in the United States. And it also explains why the State Department has been so uneasy and angry about wage increases in these global South countries. Because at the same time, the global North countries depend on very cheap consumer products imported from these global South countries. So if their wages increase in the global South countries and the cost of...
When it comes to like brown people and achieving anything, it's not possible. But it is possible? Aliens.
Consumer goods imported into the global North increase, and that means that workers in the global North will also probably demand wage increases as well, which once again will eat into the profit margins of the oligarchs who are getting richer and richer. Now, I've been speaking here for...
Hey, you know who needs to get out of their comfort zones, dude? Leftists, bro. Leftists are in these huge comfort zones, but like, who you need to cater your language to and like kiss their ass? Conservatives.
Quite a bit about how...
Because that's never happened before, ever, throughout history.
No, that's not how I've spent my entire life defending the leftist politics. No.
You know what I mean? Like, dude. Oh, man. People crack me up.
The global economy is structured in a way that benefits the wealthy colonial nations at the expense of the poor, formerly colonized nations. But what can be done? Is it hopeless? Can there be nothing done to change this? Well, of course, there are many things that can be done. The most important thing that can be done is the creation of a new international economic order. And this is precisely what formerly colonized nations in the global South have been calling for 50 years, ever since in the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1974, the formerly colonized nations representing the global majority passed a call for a new international economic order, which includes more favorable trade relations in terms of trade. It includes better compensation for commodities and raw materials. It includes support for industrialization and also technology transfer so countries can move up the value chain, and more favorable concessional terms on loans to help finance this industrialization.
So I wonder, before he gets into it, I wonder if the UN was like, you know what, guys, you've totally earned the right to this because you've been exploited for this whole time. Or if the UN was like, hey, some of the fucking countries in the United Nations specifically benefit from the colonization and exploitation of these countries. So I'm sorry, it's a big no, dog.
And economic transition. The global north countries, however, have opposed this ever since it was first called for decades ago. And the global north countries instead have adamantly done everything they can to try to maintain this system that benefits them at the expense of the global majority. So this brings me back to the model implemented by China, which I've discussed in other analyses, which I will link to in the description.
Also known as aliens in disguise and lizard people.
But the key point is that China used a state-led development model in which it used state control of key parts.
That's the only explanation as to why they've been able to become a lot more developed in the United States. It's not possible. What do you mean?
Of the economy, including financing and infrastructure, in order to develop industry and move up the value chain of production in order to no longer be dependent on importing the advanced technologies and capital goods from the wealthy imperialist countries. Instead, China used a state-led development model to develop its own industrial base and manufacturing base. And although there are, of course, differences, there are a lot of similarities in the same model that was implemented by South Korea and Japan and Singapore and also China's Taiwan province. These are all parts of East Asia known as the Asian Tigers that use similar state-led models of economic development in order to move up the value chain of industrial production, so they're no longer totally dependent on exporting low value-added products and raw materials and agricultural goods to the wealthy industrialized nations. They were able to industrialize themselves. The South Korean development economist Ha Jun-chang has shown how these countries did this through infant industry protection using protectionist policies, and then...
What's up, losers? Oh, nothing. Just we're not getting Bubba on our side, dude.
No, not at all.
We're not getting Bubba on our side. We got to talk about aliens and lizard people and fucking...
And how we need to geek people because there's dirty water.
Yeah. Talk about like revolution, but like never get descriptive enough to understand that like the means and conditions of what usually leads to revolution or what revolution even means. But Area 51. What's up, Roxy? You getting some good taco drops?
Yeah, I know, right? Leave it up to Roxy to be the only person in the world that can do a taco drop and get 25 kills and win.
China has always had 5-year plans, and the way it moved up the value-added chain was
this right here says, okay, thanks to alien technology,
less capital-intensive
we have been able to outpace the round eyes.
Concentrated its efforts in 3 industries.
Thank you,
which were
stupid
clothing,
Americans, for trying to capitulate to Republicans.
And these were referred to as the 3 old things, or in Chinese, Lao San Yang. And they perfected those industries, again, clothing, appliances, and furniture, especially focusing on things like washing machines and refrigerators. And they moved up the value chain, developing more human capital, developing the infrastructure and technology that they needed in order to move to more high value-added forms of technology. And now today, China is the world leader in some very important cutting-edge technologies, in particular in green industries needed for the transition away from fossil fuels. And China refers to these as the 3 new things, the 3 new industries, which in Chinese is Xin San Yang. And those are batteries, new energy vehicles or electric vehicles, and wind and solar power. So gradually, through state-led development and industrial policy, China moved up the global industrial structure, which you can think of as a pyramid, going from the very labor-intensive, low-value-added industries, like in garments, for instance, moving up to slightly more capital-intensive industries, like the 3 old industries, including things like household appliances, and is now at the highest level of high-tech intensive industries.
And that's a huge thing, and that's also why there's been a lot of like escalation between China and Taiwan, because Taiwan is kind of responsible for the majority of high-tech stuff that is eventually, made and traded amongst China. And I think again, is China perfect or great in any stretch of the means? No, but I think it is important to be able to look at the China project, right, and see the way that the government, not necessarily, well, maybe you can argue forced, but the way that the government allowed banks to specifically focus on investments like infrastructure, like high-tech things that are actually going to increase productivity. I think that's something that America needs to take in, because we need to have a lot more job availability, and not like, Walmart and McDonald's jobs. Like, we need high-paying jobs, high-tech jobs, jobs that aren't just for the next 5 to 10 years, because you also have to keep in mind things like automation.
Yep, big time.
Or aliens.
Or
in
aliens.
cutting-edge
You're
technologies
amazing.
like the industries that the United States is targeting with sanctions and export.
Or lizard people, dude. Just listen. If you just listen to the Grateful Dead for like 15 years and just imagine yourself being cool, it'll happen one day. I promise you, dude.
Restrictions trying to prevent China from importing advanced semiconductors, chips that it needs for things like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Also, of course, 5G and now 6G internet. So this raises a question. If China did it, can other countries also do it? And this is what I'm going to try to partially answer today. Of course, this is a very complex topic and I'm just scratching the surface. Before I analyze that in greater detail, however, I want to briefly look at a very interesting article that was published in Bloomberg titled "The Global South Breaks Away from the US-Led World Order." This report from 2023 begins acknowledging that for decades, the global economic order has been dominated by the United States. This was in the neoliberal era of market fundamentalism. And the US government told countries around the world, let trade run free, tie your currency to the US dollar, align your foreign policy with America's. And then this article notes, the US and its Western partners wrote these economic rules, and now developing countries called the Global South are quietly revising them. It notes that the Global South sees a chance to chart its own future. Bloomberg then lays out a series of policies being implemented by Global South countries. It notes that developing nations are demanding control of their resources, reordering a relationship from colonial times. They are insisting on factories being built in their own countries. Numerous countries in Africa, including Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Ghana, are preparing ban of exports of lithium, at least unprocessed.
So part of the reason why I'm still on this, he's still talking about the Global South kind of rebelling, but Africa is going to be another area where we're going to see a lot more activity. We're going to see a lot more headlines, I think, over the next 4 years as well. We're going to see a lot more resource extraction taking place, and a lot more countries trying to fight over it. So you're going to see a lot more involvement from France. You're going to see a lot more involvement from the UK, Germany, Poland.
Lithium. Indonesia prohibited the export of nickel ore, which I'll be speaking about in a bit, as part of its own industrialization campaign. Argentina, Brazil, Chile in Latin America, and also Indonesia are welcoming investments in electric vehicle battery plants from China rather than the US. And an Indonesian investment minister said, quote, we can't keep begging and begging from you. He's talking to the global north, the West. You may be angry at us for trading with other countries, but we have to survive. The article also notes that when Brazil's left-wing president Lula da Silva visited China in April, he called for replacing the dominance of the US dollar with a more democratic international monetary system. And he also gave a historic speech at the New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank, calling for de-dollarization. Furthermore, Thailand is making plans to diversify its central bank's basket of currencies. Indonesia is also shoring up local currency markets, and regional neighbors in Southeast Asia are creating digital payment systems using their own local currencies, reducing the need for the dollar. And Africa is discussing.
And this is important to look at too, because you're also going to see a lot more stuff that's going to be involving India, Turkey. There's going to be a lot more conflict. I definitely think over the next 4 years, like if we're going to be making a hypothesis checklist, if we're just taking notes, we're going to see a lot more stuff coming out of Africa. We're going to see a lot more stuff coming specifically from the Middle East. I think Syria, Turkey, Iran, India, definitely going to become a lot more involved. Just because, like I said, there's going to be a huge competition of seeing who can get in there the quickest. Because eventually soon, the genocides that are taking place in the Congo and Sudan, they have to come to an end at some point. They've been going on for a long time. And there definitely has been an accelerated focus on Africa the past 10 years. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of worried because what he's talking about right now is going to send Wall Street into a fit, just because the United States, the US dollar is not going to have the same global impact that normally it does. And if the US dollar loses its global impact value, that's going to drive its, value down. That's going to increase inflation even more. And why are all these nations doing this? Because they're tired of existing in a system that's been exploiting them for the past 150, 200 years.
Yep.
A common currency.
Even
Bloomberg
longer.
also angrily points out that most...
Oh, Taco said something. They put money into development, but left those who haven't made the cut behind, at least what I've read. When it comes to Africa, though, China has a huge hold on many of the countries as far as mining wise. No, exactly. And China not only has been doing that, but they've actually been rebuilding a lot of the infrastructure in the area. They get to do it. They get to do it as like PR, right? They're like, oh, hey, look at us. We're not America. We're not bombing them. We're fucking building roads and shit. They're not building roads because they're thinking about like the increased, productivity and wealth distribution for Africans. They're like, we need to be able to have infrastructure to move our big ass cars and trucks and all of our stuff as we're extracting it.
Yep, they're doing it to win.
Yeah, they're not doing it because like there's some fucking base nation. And unfortunately, you'll see like a lot of the American Communist Party guys be like, yeah, dude, fucking China's pretty based. It's like, no, dude, they're not fucking based. They're not doing it for the right reasons. Just like how they're trying to get excited about some of the Trump picks. Being like, oh, well, they're anti-Israel, and it's just like, brother, they're not gonna do what you think they're gonna do. That's not what you know what I mean. Like, they don't have shit they stand on. They just say whatever the fuck, depending on who gives them the money.
Most of the global south, which is the global majority, has been neutral in the proxy war in Ukraine, and they have not taken the side of the West and not joined this new Cold War that the West is waging on both China and Russia. Instead, the global south, the global majority, is emphasizing neutrality and non-alignment, and we're seeing a resurgence of the non-aligned movement that was created originally during the first Cold War. And one common topic, so here we see a clear example of Washington's hypocrisy. The U.S. constantly engages in protectionist policy.
Is there anything that you wanted to ask or add on, Jimmy, before we get into this next section of the videos? And sorry it's been so long.
No, that's good. I'm here listening. Remember, I'm learning today. This is all Marxism and how it ties into all this stuff. So I'm definitely here to learn today.
Yes. No, so basically, as he's been pointing out, like we're seeing right now, the very ideal and basic fundamental point of capitalism is resource extraction. And the only reason why we have iPhones for, $150, $200, $300, when it's going on sale and all the shit that we have, it's not because we have some system that is built on, the interest or protection of the worker. It's built on the exploitation and extraction from them. And Marxist theory revolves around the concept of the redistribution of that. Like a lot of his argument. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. A lot of his argument revolves around them being like, hey, if you're a worker for a company that makes cars and that company makes record profit, that profit isn't really profit. It's exploited labor. Sorry, labor. It's exploited labor. We are entitled to that exploited labor because it is our labor that generated all of that revenue. We are the ones responsible. Yes, you have the machines, you have the factory, but if you ran it by yourself, you wouldn't be able to keep up with demand. We're the ones that keep your business afloat. So using that basis, we get to get more. The company gets more. We all get to make money. It's not about I get to make all of it and you get nothing. And it's not about like, the selfishness or, the individualistic version of, getting something. Like our buddies from Poland was trying to say the other day. It's like, no, we need to ensure that everybody who's working at this factory makes enough to have their basic needs met.
Yep.
America hasn't really done the infrastructure building China has, especially the last couple decades, even outside of Africa. America goes in, destroys, but it doesn't rebuild, really finds areas to build up, at least from my view. No, dude, you're 100% correct on that. 100% correct. I mean, shit, dude. Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait,
Libya,
the Congo, Sudan,
yeah, you just keep
Libya.
going.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Chile, Argentina, Venezuela, Yemen.
Yep.
It's just,
Fuck Haiti, Somalia.
yeah, Honduras, Indonesia, India.
Look, that's all we ever do.
So 100% right. Cambodia,
Ooh, that's a good one.
Vietnam,
Yep.
Korea, Japan,
Japan. Jesus.
New Zealand, the Philippines.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? That's
Yep.
just think
And
about that for a
and
minute.
that's why kind of China, this BRICS coalition is kind of quote unquote winning, It might be just for face, but they're doing it right, at least to the people who don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and if you're somebody who doesn't normally pay attention, but you're at least aware enough to understand like the exploitation and shit, and then these BRICS members are like, "Hey man, America's fucking you over." And they're not telling you, but
Yeah.
we're telling you, and we'll tell you other stuff too. That's how you're getting a lot of these crazy ass like blue magas, like communists.
Yep.
And it's just, I still don't get that either.
I know. And it's
You know
not
what my
gonna
explanation is for that though?
what?
Aliens.
I
That's the only
love you
explanation
to
I
death,
have.
I swear to God. Uh, it's like isolationism, but
Sees
still
and
flicking around for fun, or fucking around
Fucking
for fun.
around. Speaking, ficky
You
ficky.
you can't even curse in a chat, Taco.
tariffs and subsidies and industrial policy,
Policies
putting
and
export
tariffs and
restrictions
subsidies.
on China,
Yeah.
tariffs on Chinese goods, banning the export of advanced semiconductors
Honestly,
to China.
I think
The U.S. is now
sanctions
going
and
to
shit
spend
like
trillions
that,
of dollars
like
through
they're good.
the Inflation
Like they
Reduction
can be
Act and the
good,
CHIPS
but
Act,
they've
in
never really
industrial
been
policy, in subsidies and tax
used
breaks
for good.
for
I can't
green
think of one
energy
off
and
the top
other
of my
advanced
hizzy.
technology. And then the U.S. criticizes other countries that
Sanctions.
engage in the same.
Maybe on Russia and shit like that we've done every once in a while, but even then, I don't even think that's been good because like ultimately, my conception of sanctions is like really governments never feel any pressure, the oligarchs never feel any pressure, the business owners never feel any pressure. The only people who feel pressure from sanctions are poor people. So that's why I kind of don't like them.
Hold on. Sanctions. I keep thinking subsidies.
So sanctions is basically like usually part of like embargoes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just policies and rules that restrict import export
Okay, okay. Yeah.
and money transfers.
But isn't that not free capitalism though? Or free market capitalism? If you have like rules and regulations?
But it's different because they're either communist or like they're
Oh, so we get to put
underdeveloped.
rules on them because they're less than or they're communist. They're
Well,
red
yeah, and
or not
they
human.
need democracy. You know what I mean?
Got it.
Kinds of industrial policy and protectionism. So this is the extreme hypocrisy of the U.S. I'm not against protectionism. Obviously, countries have forever used protectionism to advance their industrial development. Every wealthy country, every rich economy developed through protectionism, through infant industry protectionism, going back to the first ever Treasury Secretary in the U.S., Alexander Hamilton, who advocated for all these policies. So the problem is not protectionism. The problem is the hypocrisy of the U.S. that tells other countries to do the exact opposite of what it does. And I cite this book all the time, but it's because it's so important. The South Korean development economist Ha Jun-chang showed in his book Kicking Away the Ladder how the Western countries all developed through these policies and yet kicked away the ladder. And he was quoting a 19th century German economist, Friedrich List, who created the same concept. He used that term to describe how the British Empire and the other advanced economies did the exact same thing. They developed through protectionism and then told other countries to do the exact opposite of what they did. So getting back to this article
every
in the Age
time
of
they
Times, we
talk
can see
about how our economy and our system and our government is nowadays, they always track it back to somebody from Germany. Every fucking time.
German, yeah.
Like they did something fucking great. Like they're, not like they're, living in regret still to this fucking day.
Yeah. They don't have anything that they're shamed about. That's for
No.
sure.
clear this hypocrisy is. The European Union is the party that brought this complaint to the WTO, criticizing Indonesia for its industrial policy and protectionist policies that seek industrialization.
Take care,
and
cookies.
What have the results been in
Love
Indonesia?
You,
they've been extremely successful.
Watch out for
this
the
article notes
aliens
that in
and lizard
2019,
people, all right?
before Indonesia banned
Don't
the
let
export
them
of
get
raw
you.
minerals, the mining sector only contributed.
Yo, dude, and start the revolution. We're not going to tell you exactly like fundamental principles or theory or anything.
Right.
But revolution, brother, it's coming.
And if you can dream up a
It's
way
coming.
to invent and create a guillotine to where a rich person will come and walk up to it, that would be great.
Yeah. But also, like, I don't know, man. Antifa are kind of like too violent, bro. These radical leftists are always being violent and like full of cancel culture. You know what I mean? These broads,
5%,
but also I'm for women's rights, but also like I'm a womanizer.
to gross domestic product. However, as of 2021, just 2 years later after the nickel ban, the minerals value added increased from 1.1 billion to 20.8 billion. That is an increase of 20 times due to this policy. And the article also predicts that this figure will rise to more than 30 billion. And Indonesia's President Widodo said, this is just one
Wait, due to
commodity.
what
The government will
policy?
continue to consistently carry out down.
You said what?
He said, due to what policy made nickel rise that much?
Okay, let me back it up a little bit.
Party that brought this complaint to the WTO, criticizing Indonesia for its industrial policy and protectionist policies that seek industrialization. And what have the results been in Indonesia? They've been extremely successful. This article notes that in 2019, before Indonesia banned the export of raw minerals, the mining sector only contributed 5% to gross domestic product. However, as of 2021, just 2 years later after the nickel ban, the minerals value added increased from 1.1 billion to 20.8 billion. That is an increase.
So because of a ban and because of, you know, the rigged free market, they were able to increase the value out of the same production.
Of 20 times due to this policy.
Or actually even a lack of production. Sorry, because they said it was a decrease by like 2 to 5% or some shit, right? Yeah.
Also predicts that this figure will rise to more than 30 billion. And Indonesia's President Widodo said, this is just one commodity. The government will continue to consistently carry out downstreaming so that added value is enjoyed domestically for the advancement and welfare of the people. Again, this is the point. Indonesia is using its own resources to benefit its own people, not multinational corporations based largely in the US.
Indonesia
And this is why
needs
Washington
to
and
be
also
careful.
the EU
There's a
are so
couple of
angry.
countries that try to do that, and we killed their leader. I mean,
And it's why
Saddam Hussein.
Gaddafi. Well, Saddam Hussein was a
Gaddafi.
piece of shit too, though.
Yeah, but he
the
still
World Trade
tried to
Organization and the IMF.
nationalize his shit.
Yeah, no, and that was one of the things too. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he knew he was starting to lose popularity.
Because he had that great speech too.
You talking about during his trial?
I think so. I don't remember. I just remember that he was a speech. I think it was in front of the United Nations or something, and he ripped something up and was like, "This is what America's gonna do to you. Be careful." Maybe that was Gaddafi that said that. I think it was Gaddafi.
Yeah, Gaddafi. I remember him ripping stuff up, but
Okay, then it was
Saddam.
Gaddafi.
He was like on a trial and he had a whole like big speech about how the courts were like the American dog and shit like
Yeah.
that. Sorry for spamming. I'm a dip, grab some dinner. Probably be back if y'all on. Dude, not spamming at all. Part
Not
of the
at all.
conversation, brother.
Yep. But
Appreciate
yeah,
you.
Indonesia needs to definitely be careful
Speak
and
on
shit
behalf of the
because
Western neo
it's not safe for them to want to do this kind of stuff when America's around.
Yeah, they got China backing them up though.
liberal
Touche.
governments. It's why they are condemning Indonesia's nationalist policies. Furthermore, the Indonesian president Widodo estimated that industrialization of bauxite will see revenues increase from 1.3 billion to 4.1 billion due to the value-added impact. And by the way, the copper giant in Indonesia, Freeport Indonesia, PTFI, is majority owned by the government. So this is in some ways similar to some of the policies carried out by China, using state-led industrial development to try to move up the value chain, not relying on the free market and this neoliberal orthodoxy that the Western powers have imposed on the global South that did not lead them to develop. It never has led them to develop. And this article points out that in 2018, this state-owned company, Freeport Indonesia, took a controlling interest from a U.S. mining giant. So here we see a case study of what is exactly the problem that U.S. corporations for decades, for centuries have, and of course, when you add in the European colonialists, for centuries, these colonial powers have been exploiting the raw materials of these global South countries, reducing their wages, preventing them from industrializing and developing, and maintaining this unbalanced trade system, this unequal exchange in which they suck out the wealth of the global South. And countries like Indonesia are following the state-led industrial development model, also, of course, China being the key example, that has allowed them to try to at least partially reverse this process of the colonialist nations draining the wealth from the formerly colonized nations.
What's so crazy is
It's
it's not even like
almost
other countries are doing this. This is like private corporations, businesses that are doing this to other countries and doing it to us too, and we're not even realizing it as well.
yeah. Well, and I love this example because it's amazing what happens when you allow a nation to build its economy from the bottom up. You actually see economic growth and stability as
Right.
opposed to, what we see a lot of times with, the American version.
Right.
But that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show on that video. Again, I apologize that it was kind of long, but it did a great job of understanding that, like, there's protectionism that's in place in the system for the free market that allows people who live in the United States to be like, oh yeah, it's a great system because I have my iPhone, I have my computer, I have my gaming system, I have my cheeseburgers, my pizza, my XYZ, but they don't think about the process it takes for all of that to get there and the people that are involved in that process, because we've been so far removed from like true productivity that our conception of it is just completely gone. All we do in America is consume now. We don't produce anything.
Yeah.
Right? Well,
Absolutely.
according to some people, we produce thought capital because, that's our number one export. But like other than that, we don't produce shit.
God, what I would give to have thinking have value. Holy fucking shit. That would be amazing.
Right? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes. I would be valuable.
So one of the reasons too that I wanted to watch that video and brought up the global south is because a lot of times whenever you will hear
That was a tongue twister.
I know I can't fucking speak today. Whenever you hear about socialism, especially in the South, you will always get people who talk about like, no, that's fascism, man. That's actually fascism. And a lot of times people conflate fascism and communism. There's been a lot of people who always tried to, bring up whether it was the leader in Poland, who was a dictator, he was very fascist, used economic populism kind of like somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important to watch this video. Once again, shout out to our boy, Richard Wolff. Always does a great job of breaking stuff down.
There are still people who make an equation between fascism and socialism,
Yeah, I'll be right back.
who like to think of them as somehow together having a big role for the government and that's the issue. That's a remarkable act, given that Hitler attacked and destroyed the Soviet Union, given that every fascist has been the enemy of socialists and vice versa for as long as modern history.
Yeah, that's another thing too that always cracks me up, because motherfuckers would be like, you know who the real fucking Nazis are? Socialists. It's like, no, dude, socialists are the ones who killed the Nazis. That black book shit that you'll always hear people bring up. A lot of times whenever people talk about communism, they talk about the threat of it, and they always bring up, or oftentimes bring up, the black book. It was like, have you heard about the black book, dude? And they lean in and shit like they're a fucking secret agent or something. They're like, yeah, bro, communism is responsible for millions and millions of deaths. And you're like, whoa, dude, that's crazy, that's scary. But then you end up finding out that, like, a lot of the deaths are fucking literal Nazis. They include Nazis in their death count. But I'm sorry, Nazis don't get included. I'm sorry. And then also on top of that, like, what, has capitalism not killed millions of people? Because I'd argue that it has. Famine, poverty, obesity, cancer, violence, war. These are all byproducts of capitalism, are they not? Are you still there? Hello? Oh, we lost Jimmy. It's all right. I'm here with you guys. Hold my hand. Everybody hold my hand.
Records of these two social forces. Yes, they both want the government to step in, but that's where it ends. They want the government to step in for radically different reasons on a different project going to a different future. The fascists want the government to come in and reinforce, stabilize private capitalist profits. And the socialists want the government in to help transform society so it isn't capitalist anymore, so that the number one guide to what gets produced, what gets invested in, isn't profits for a few, but social benefits for the many. The socialists are the ones who make fun of the notion that if you do something for private profit, it'll trickle down and help everybody else. No, it doesn't, they point out, which is why the inequality that we have seen in the last 30 years only worsens the inequality that capitalism already had.
And who is responsible for the idea or notion of trickle-down economics? Mr. Ronald Reagan himself. Just say no.
And that's why the so-called solution to the instability of capitalism, its periodic downturns punctuated by the collapses and crashes that we've been talking about today, socialists argue that's not a system worth preserving. That's not a system that should be fixed up yet again. It is a refrigerator that has broken down so many times that the only logical and sensible response is to get a new one, to go to a different one, not to keep fixing something that works as badly as this one has now done, and repeatedly. Well then, what can we say about this? Well, the first and most important lesson is fascism is the effort by the richest people in the society, sitting on top of the biggest corporations, to save the system that made them rich after it has gone through a crash, like 1929,
Okay.
like 2000.
My bad. I didn't hear you initially.
That's what it's about.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Save
I think I said
the
it quietly. I
system.
was going to the bathroom
Get
really quick.
rid of the critics of the system, the left, the socialists, the communists, the critics. Shut them up. Put them in jail. Kill them. Get rid of them.
Yeah, and we literally watched a documentary about that. It was called The Night of the Long Knives, where Hitler had realized that he had enough power, he had enough backing, he had enough capital to back himself, and he didn't need the economic populist message anymore. He could shed it.
Yeah.
So, again, I think it's important when your drunk uncle at Thanksgiving's talking about like the real Nazis were socialists, you remind them, no, they killed all of socialists. Like, socialists were literally the first people that they jailed and killed. And then it was gay people.
Yep.
And then and trans people. And then it was Jewish people.
Yep.
And the Romanis. And, you know, Hitler got all of his... You want to know where Hitler got a lot of his ideas for? When it came to, like, concentration camps and shit?
What's that?
America. When he studied and learned about the way that the United States of America treated the Native Americans and specifically black people in chattel slavery, he loved it, and he thought it was the best concept ever, and that's what inspired a lot of the stuff that he did, was his infatuation with the way that America handled the Native American problem and the slave problem.
Wow.
Fun fact.
And then deregulate, support, subsidize. Use the power of the government to support a broken economic system. And do it all in the name of the nation, of the identity of the nation. Find people to demonize who threaten the nation and then act out a drama of squelching them. In Germany, it was leftists and Jews. In Italy, it was Southerners versus Northerners, and Gypsies and Jews.
Me personally, I don't like this word. I prefer Romani, but yeah, that's when he says this word, I'll refer to it as the G word. What he means is Romani. A lot of people, specifically in Europe, view this as a slur.
Oh. I did not know
this
that.
word, this word is often used as a slur.
It's such a pretty word, though.
Well, no, 100%, and obviously some of it's been appropriated here in the United States, but like overall, I know, at least in like an international sense, they prefer being called Romani. I'm sure there's some who probably like, I don't give a shit, dude, but
right.
But yeah, that's just
Oh,
one thing. If you were confused and wondering like what does he mean, by that word, he means the Romani people, and the Romani people were, well, a lot of them were Jewish in a lot of cases, but not all of them were, obviously, and they were constantly being persecuted. They were persecuted and constantly pushed from their homes, just probably as much as the Jewish people were in Europe.
Shit. Okay.
In other countries, excuse me, you invent a good old days mythology, a story.
Where else have we been hearing, good old days? What happened to the good old days, man?
Yeah, making America great again and all that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Of the past when the nation
But Trump, but Trump's not a fascist. That's just Trump derangement syndrome. Because Trump's stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Trump is so stupid that he won the popular vote, the electoral vote. His policy and rhetoric won fucking the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court. But he's dumb.
And great
and controlled by aliens and lizard people.
Super, and we're gonna go back there. Make whatever put in the country great again. That's a standard play. Hitler called what he was doing the Third Reich because it had a Reich that was the second and a Reich that was the first. That was the good old days of the past of Germany, and he was gonna bring it back. Make Germany great again, literally, his slogan. And use whatever supports a nationalism can. If you can identify the nation with religion, go for that.
And that was one of the main reasons, too, why the United States was so, basically so fucking nice to Nazis, is because, and there was one point during World War II where the United States was seriously contemplating working with the Nazis and fighting against Stalin because they viewed communism as a bigger threat than Nazism. And again, one of the main reasons was because Hitler understood the importance of symbology, obviously being a nationalist, and understood the importance of religion to people. If you can hide behind a religion, you can also become kind of like a messiah. You can become, God in a way. So it was definitely something that he took under, and again, it's something that we're seeing again with Trump, right? Like after the assassination attempts, he was talking about, God put me here. Listen, Joe, I heard the bullets go right past, and it's just divine intervention. Even a lot of his supporters were going around talking about like, well, he's here for a reason. He's out here taking bullets and doing stuff. Yeah, it's the United States. Like, hey, they view religion as important as we do. In other words, like, hey, they use religion as a means of, persecution and subjugation, as opposed to spreading some sort of peaceful message, which is supposedly what it's supposed to be for. But I mean,
Yeah.
Use religion as a way. We're protecting our religion we're protecting our nationalism. And we're going to have a powerful government.
Yeah, because ultimately, too, if you attack the religion, right, like, if you're attacking the movement, you're attacking religion, and that's, that's fucked up, dude.
That does that so you can disguise and cover the support for a broken economic system against its critics and build up the military. Why? Because that, too, is protecting the nation against foreign endangerment of whatever kind you can conjure up. The nationalist hysteria is a mechanism fascism has always used to support its prime function, which is to rescue, reinforce, and stabilize the instability and the social problems of a capitalist system.
Shout out me boy.
Yep.
So our last final video of the day is Richard Wolff countering a lot of libertarian arguments, and I thought this would be good because ultimately a lot of people who consider themselves Democrats are kind of moving towards a more libertarian aspect. I think it's only a matter of time because they're going to get failed too, and they're going to be like, well, fuck the government, we don't need the government's a lie, taxation's theft. And a lot of people do kind of hold that sentiment, unfortunately. Something people have to get better about, but here we go.
The first thing that struck me about this libertarian forum were the arguments of my other debater, the one debating against me, that kept referring to the problem of socialism being that Russian leadership under socialism and Chinese had killed millions of people. I always find this a bizarre way of arguing about economic systems.
Yeah, I was just literally actually talking about this. Yo, thank you, Richard Wolff. It's like, you know what the fuck I'm talking about, man. Appreciate you. But yeah, no, it's also really weird too. Like, I'm glad he's put it, because it is weird, right? Like, we're talking about an economic system. Why the fuck are you so focused on like what the military branch of that economic ideology did?
A kind of a body count approach. But okay.
Especially considering what capitalism's done. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a winning argument, dude.
What they want to do, let's make a comparison. Capitalism has been the dominant system for the last 150, 200 years, pretty much around the world. What's its record in terms of the killing of people out of capitalist competition, capitalist enmity, inside countries, across countries? Well, it's way in excess of anything the socialists could claim. Let's start with World Wars I and II. I mean, conservatively, those killed 50 to 100 million people, so we're already in a different league. And those were wars that came out of competition among capitalist countries like Germany, England, the United States, Japan, and so on.
Damn, out here spitting, my guy.
So on. So really, are we going to go down that road? Then there's the thing called colonialism and imperialism, in which capitalist countries, mostly in Europe, went around the world killing huge numbers of people.
Yeah,
to make
literally
the whole world
genociding
useful and
entire
profitable
indigenous
to Europe.
people.
I mean, why do you think there was a slave trade that basically destroyed Africa for hundreds of years, denuding it of its people? And that was in order to bring those Africans to the Western Hemisphere.
I don't really like when
for
people
sugar,
self-promo.
and then for cotton, which were very profitable commodities capitalists bought and sold. And then there was colonialism everywhere else in the world.
Wow.
But if you're talking about Marxism, dude,
an economic study
we're
of
not
Britain and
appealing
Kenya
to
in East
Bubba.
Africa. And one of the things I discovered is when the British arrived in 1895, they did a census. 4 million Africans lived in Kenya. 30 years later, they did another census. 2.5 million people lived.
Whoa, what was that? 4 million. 30 years later.
30 years later, they did another census. 2.5 million people lived. In that little country, over that few years, 1.5 million people disappeared. That has to be chalked up to capitalism. So if you're going to go this route,
that's a lot. That's a big fucking chunk
of counting the dead. Sure, you can make a criticism of Stalin and Mao. They deserve criticism.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I was talking to you about this the other night, actually, Jimmy. Like, yeah, like Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, like these are all people that, yes, 100%, you should criticize the everlasting shit out of them. But at least with Stalin, shout out to my boy, he killed a bunch of fucking Nazis. So, like,
killing is not good anywhere. But the idea that you have found a flaw in the capitalism-socialism debate is bizarre. Why would you even go down that road, especially...
And I say that as somebody who has family that fought in World War II. So, like, it's not like I'm talking about modern practice for those trying to climb chimp.
5 minutes of reflection showing you it's not good for your side of the argument. Then there was an even stranger kind of thing, very typical, I think, for libertarians. The fellow on the other side argued that he agreed with me that capitalism was full of flaws. I had laid those out, as I do on this program often, and he agreed with me. He said it's so bad he would call it, in his words, crapitalism. Okay, everybody giggled. But then he kept saying to me, yeah, it's terrible, but your socialism is worse. Why, I asked. Well, he answered, because then the government will become very powerful, and the government is bad. I said, really? Is the government bad by definition? Are we like talking in religion where God is good and the devil is bad and the world is nicely organized in that way? Is the government necessarily bad? And his basic answer to me was yes. The government ipso facto is bad. And you don't ask why the government does something. Apparently among these folks, they don't explain.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay. This is shit that always pisses me off because whether it's, you know, argument about the government, whether it's about the media, whatever, people will make blanket statements where they're like, fuck the government, fuck media, fuck all that shit, fuck it. It's like, okay, but why?
Right.
What about it? What about it is bad? What about it can actually be fixed? Or can it not be? You know what I mean? Because 9 times out of 10, whenever people are like bringing something up, whether it be media, whether it be big government, whatever the case is, they they never get specific for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe you can figure that out. And they never operate it from of like, okay, what's going to happen after that? There's no foresight, there's no actual thought process. It's just reactionary.
Explain it. It's just sort of given. Government is bad. What government does is unwanted because it's bad.
Because like ultimately, right? You can try to say, yeah, government's bad. But okay, if the government's bad, I guess you don't like, you know, unionization, you don't like working standards. You don't like the fact that if you work 8 hours, you're guaranteed an hour break. You don't like the fact that you actually do have to get paid for the time that you're working.
Right. I mean, that's pretty much what a government is for, is to make sure that these companies and, the employees or employers themselves don't take advantage of workers, and it's not what they're doing.
Yeah, no. The whole point of government is supposed to be protection. And
Yeah, checks and
obviously we're not
balances.
seeing that.
That's what their whole motto is checks and balances, right?
Yeah. Just like the police's motto is protect and serve.
The idea that the government is what it is because of the society in which it exists, that it doesn't come fully finished out of nowhere, but is a product of the society that it's trying to govern, that doesn't seem to have gotten into that. I find that bizarre in the history of the United States, when most observers would agree that both in 1929, when the stock market crashed, and again in 2008, when the stock market crashed, everybody, led by the business community, went to the government to save us. It saved us with the New Deal in the 1930s, and it saved us with the Bush and Obama stimulus programs. Apparently, the government sometimes does good things. So the issue is, why would the government be a necessary bad one? In which it exists, that it doesn't come fully finished out of nowhere.
Well, I hope that obviously we were able to debunk a couple things. I'm looking forward to eventually clipping this out, posting this up, getting some more interactions. Do appreciate everybody who came by today. Shout out to my lords above. Weeble wibble dibble.
Okay.
Aliens. Jimmy, is there anything that you wanted to end on before we take off?
Hold on, sorry, I'm clipping this video. Okay, it's clipped. No, just thanks for doing this. I can't wait to get into it a little bit more. Um, and yeah, when are we gonna do our show next? What we got?
I'm thinking we might be able to do one tomorrow, if not definitely the day after.
Okay.
So we'll definitely be doing one again. We will have to brainstorm if we want to kind of continue on this path or if we want to jump to a different subject. Because I think eventually what'll be nice is just kind of having a playlist where we can just kind of dump stuff into. Yo, what's going on, Game.Film? Akira, what's going on, everybody? Sorry, you guys are catching the end of the stream.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you guys popping in. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. What's up, Game.Film?
But yeah, I think our next episode we'll talk a little bit more just about the impact of day-to-day life, how it's going to be, things to expect, more talking points to counter your annoying drunk uncle, to get him to shut the fuck up.
That's right.
Maybe even do like a full Thanksgiving episode, right? Like we can do a full deflect away from your drunk uncle's uncomfortable conversations. I think that would be fun.
Okay. I'm down with that. I like that.